And
where'd it go?
Oh, I'm so.
Where'd it
know
go?
what? It crawled
It's gone.
away.
It's
Hello.
gone. Hello.
It crawled away.
I guess it just wasn't doing it for me anymore.
It had undone it for me. Anyway, guys, welcome. It is Thursday afternoon, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and I've decided that facial hair just isn't for me. I thought it could work potentially.
No.
You know what the weird thing is the fact that I've had facial hair for almost a month, and now it's almost like a weird look now. It's like, oh,
No,
that's right.
It's not. It was unmemorable. We're all going to just try to forget it. It wasn't good.
Yeah, well.
Just accept it. Your face is so good looking that we don't want any of it covered in hair.
You have to admit, though, that there are, who is the, I'll take that.
Yeah.
So obviously it's great to see you all here. 8,100 likes for what? For this video? Well, if that is true, because I haven't checked, then that would say a lot about why our channel is so suppressed, which of course it is.
Well, and all of what's going on now is not going to help.
No, and I think that also speaks to a greater truth here, which is we have tried in every which way since we somehow decided that our lives were going to be wrapped up in this racket known as politics, that it's always going to be necessary to take the right stand, even if it means ruffling certain feathers.
He makes it sound like this was some sort of decision we came to.
Well, a lot of people, unfortunately, don't want to take chances.
See, I'm not a politician. So it was a matter of just, this is who I am. So that's that. Like I didn't make a decision on this is going to be the correct stance. Like this is just where I am. Yeah. It's been a journey for me. There was a point when I believed in two-state solution, all that. It's been a journey for me. I've not been secretive about that.
And there are people that are still suggesting that could be possible.
It's not now. No, and the reason it's not is completely because of Israel. Honestly, though, from my understanding and a lot of the readings and research and stuff that I've been doing, it was never really meant to be real. There have been a couple of times where it has been presented, and Israel has shut it down both of those times within recent years. Like one was the Oslo. I mean, this is something that is just a known thing. I cannot argue about it. They don't want a two-state solution. Well, but anyway, it's been a process. I didn't get here quickly. It's been a very long process. So I appreciate other people that are on that path. And it's not mentally easy. It's very difficult.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think that you were necessarily on the wrong path. And I don't think there's anything wrong in terms of how you got here. I think the fact of the matter is you were always on the right side of it, trying to find a solution that would lead to the least amount of bloodshed. The biggest problem that I think we face today, specifically within not just the Zionist Jewish community, but just the Jewish community overall, because there's still a lot of them that still cannot get out of there. They still cannot wrap their heads around this idea that Gaza is an occupied territory. To me, that is the issue here, because I've spoken to enough of them where they literally say, not even with a little bit of nuance, completely unequivocally, no, it's not an occupation.
See, I don't understand. How did they explain the barbed wire and the lack of entry and exit? Like, I don't understand. How do you explain that then? If it's not occupied, then why can't they come or go? And why can't people bring products in and stuff? Like, I don't understand. So what would that be then? And by the way, I'm not calling this a prison. I've thought about this long and hard. As a legal person, the concept of prison implies some sort of criminality. And I reject that. It's actually a concentration camp. And I think that words matter. I always say that words matter. So, I mean, you could say outdoor prison, but that really isn't appropriate because, again, that presumes some sort of criminality. And that's not the case. This is literally a concentration camp. Or walled-in ghetto in some places, maybe prior to concentration. But yeah, it's not a prison.
You know, we're not here to... I mean, obviously, you want to dissuade people's very, very wrong opinions about the circumstances of what's going on right now. But we also cannot lose sight of the fact that there are a lot of people who are scared for various reasons. But the one thing that really comes to mind, particularly in the Jewish community, is the fact that you do have certain people of certain stature at certain levels that are being extremely vocal about this and saying that the Jewish people are being persecuted and they're in the line of fire and all of this. And here's my response to that. Is it possible that is the case for some people? Absolutely. If you cannot recognize that what is happening in Gaza is a genocide, how do you expect people to respond? You have people say, oh my God, they're cheering on Hamas. It's like, well, if Hamas is the only thing that may be standing in the way of a complete ethnic cleansing, then you have to be able to put yourself in the other people's shoes. And it seems to me that there's only one side of the story that's being told. We all know who the biggest players are. Of course, the biggest name right now, of course, is Amy Schumer. We're not going to dive into her because there's no point.
And just for people to be aware, and he'll attest to this, I don't follow her. I don't know anything about this. I don't want to talk about her. I don't want to give lip service to her. I've never found her funny.
Neither did I.
Like, I never gave her any mind whatsoever.
But the thing about her that I think really speaks to a lot of the big problems that people see today, and there's always these anti-Semitic tropes that are always thrown around regarding Jewish people, but she is as negative a stereotype as you can possibly get.
Well, like our congresswoman.
Well, she's not funny. She does steal jokes. That is well documented. She is also somebody who is, let's just say, not easy on the eyes. I'm not one to judge people based on their looks. I look for what is on the inside. And if what's on the inside is ugly, then I am okay to critique their outside. And so in her case, she is as ugly on the inside as you can possibly be. So hence I can make fun of the fact that she is not so good looking on the outside.
I don't ever go there with him. It bothers me immensely that he goes to the physical. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to me what she looks like, but I don't think she's funny.
She likes to declare herself the most successful comedian of all time.
Who is, wait.
Amy just said this the other day.
That she is?
It's the most, yes.
So like people like, I don't know, Joan Rivers or Lucille Ball or people like that, like.
Oh, they don't exist. They all come second to Amy. I am related to Chuck Schumer.
That's hilarious.
The other thing that I always found so very entertaining about this person, and again, I don't want to get into conspiracies here, but when you are directly related to the most powerful senator right now, granted, I still say it's Mitch McConnell, even if he's not in the majority position.
And even if he's not even coherent.
Well, but the point is that Charles Schumer is her cousin. And the amount of influence that provides for certain people, look no further than, I think I'm going to be president of the United States, Gavin Newsom. How many people know that Gavin Newsom's aunt is Nancy Pelosi? That's his aunt.
We live in a very, very, it's like the merging of an oligarchy and a monarchy, and that birthed our Congress.
Could you briefly speak, without addressing her specifically, but can you briefly speak about this issue, whether it's with
the bad
a
Jews.
handful of these Jewish, wealthy, affluent women that seem to think that when they speak, everybody must listen?
Right. Well, there's definitely a certain level of privilege and entitlement that just some people, it just oozes off of them. She strikes me as one of those people. Wealthy white women crying victim is not a good look. It's just not a good look. Even if you might really be a victim sometime, in this particular case, it's just not a good look. Also, I would suggest that people look to other not those Jews. There's unfortunately a lot of Jews that represent the absolute worst of us. And when I see that, it's like there are many times where I'm looking at certain people and I'm like, yeah, it's no wonder that there's anti-Semitism right now. Now, in all reality, there has been anti-Semitism forever. It is real. It is scary. My family escaped it in Russia. Like it's not a joke. I take that seriously. I've experienced it personally. It's real. Like that is real. But it has nothing to do with the state of Israel. In fact, the Israel situation, it's almost like we're giving justification for people to have an issue with Jews. And as far as the Palestinians that are in Gaza, for anyone who's suggesting that they hate Jews and want to kill Jews, yeah, duh. And I would suggest that if the state of Israel was a Christian state, they would be saying that about Christians. So this isn't a chicken and an egg thing. This isn't like they hated us, so then we had to put them in a cage and did it. No, that's not how that happened. So facts be told, they were fine. They didn't have an issue with Jews. They just don't want to live in a Jewish state since, it's theirs. That's all. So now maybe after 15, 16 years in captivity, you've got more than half the population of Gaza are children, which means that most of them were born in captivity. Right? So most of the people that live there were born in captivity. I want everyone to stop and think how you would feel about your captor And by the way, your information and your resources are very limited. It's not like they can just go on the internet whenever they want to and go research. It's not like they have access to quality education or healthcare or anything, right? So what would you like your captors? Would you think your captors are swell? And what if that was your only knowledge of Jews? What if your only knowledge of Jews was that those are the people that are your captors and keep you in a cage? I'm thinking you might not like us. Well, similarly in this country, when we see representations of Jews, like people like Deborah Messing, Sarah Silverman, Amy Schumer, like the three of them.
You have to address Maya
Bialik, whatever. Well, she's weird to me. She's just, good God, nobody should listen to her. But like when I see these women, it's the same thing to me. It's like, it's no wonder that people would see these privileged white women just sitting there oozing and being all, where's the Jewish thing? And then thinking, yeah, I want to hang out with those people. I think, are you kidding me? This is the worst representation of Jewish people ever. May I recommend, I don't know, Jon Stewart? May I recommend, like, there's got to be certain people that we can come up with that would be better viewing material for you. It's very frustrating, but I think that also about my representative. And by the way, this is one of the things that's infuriating me most about Congress right now. Apparently now 18 people have signed on to the requesting of a ceasefire. Only 18 of 435 people. Only 18 of them want a ceasefire. And none of those are Jewish people. There is not a single Jewish representative in Congress that has their head on straight. That's, to me, the worst representation of Judaism I have ever seen in my life. You people should be ashamed of yourselves. And then I look at all these amazing tribes people in JVP, like Rosalind Paczewski and these people, and Rabbi Brant Rosen, who are, Jews that are putting themselves on the line for what is right. And you've got all these Jews sitting in a power position in Congress, and they're too scared to even speak. You're cowards. You're cowards. That's what it is. You know what? It's ridiculous. Rosalind Paczewski is an 84-year-old woman who comes from Jewish Palestinian survivors of the Nakba. And this woman at 84 years old was just arrested at Grand Central Station protesting what Israel is doing in Gaza.
I'm going to play you a quick clip to give you an idea of just how bad this really is. So for those of you who may or may not have been paying attention, President Biden spoke at a very exclusive fundraiser in Minnesota, of all states, the other day. A lady in the audience who is a rabbi, Rabbi Jessica Rosenberg, I believe is her name. She's the Jewish Voice for Peace, I think. Yes. Decided to let the president know that what's happening is not good. Well, here's the reaction.
Mr. President, if you care about Jewish people as a rabbi, I need you to call for a ceasefire right now. No.
So let's get this straight. A Jewish rabbi requesting a ceasefire just got booed and asked to leave by a whole bunch of other women in the audience sycophanting to Joe Biden. I just want to make sure that I saw this correctly. And somehow that's good for Jews. Yeah, I'm not feeling it.
Pretty distinct, if you ask me.
Oh my God.
And that in many ways is just representative of kind of where things are at right now. I look at it and I see it as a class war. I've always seen this as a class war. And unfortunately, the loudest Jewish people in this country right now who are in favor of what Israel is doing are of the affluent class.
Well, yeah.
These are not working class Jews that are saying, oh my God, we totally must side with what Israel is doing. These are people who live in a very isolated bubble in society. And that bubble, it's being pierced right now, and they don't like it. And whether it is Maya Bialik, whether it is Amy Schumer, whether it is good old Deborah Messing, and a whole bunch of others sprinkled in between, Gal Gadot, they cannot help themselves because in this instant, they are absolutely removing the mask. They do not want to know why Hamas attacked Israel. They want their revenge, their bloodlust for revenge.
Yeah, by the way, it's not defense. I love that. Israel has a right to defend itself. It does. I have a lot of thoughts on, we could argue the existence of Israel or not, but does it have a right to defend itself? Yes, it does. But that stopped when you dealt with all the people that crossed the border and came after your people. then you were done defending yourself. This is not defense. And everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. We're watching it in real time. We're watching a genocide in real time.
Yep. And who is ultimately going to step up and say it's time for this to end?
I feel like I'm getting an ulcer over this, and I don't even deserve to be saying that, just based on my like total luxury and privilege of being here and not really having to deal with this. That it's like, this is something that they're not going to be able to come back from, these people. Like you're never going to be able to fix what side of history you're on with this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just amazing to me that they just do not see it.
Well, I think they see it, but again, they're in denial of it, because I think that, as I said from the beginning, they are just in denial of the realities of what is going on right now. You also have to take into account that no one is talking about the fact that Netanyahu and his cronies have basically been funding Hamas the entire time to keep this going.
Right. Right. Well, that involves like knowing nuance, context, and historical facts. And I would bet that Amy Schumer knows not the first thing about the actual history of Israel and the area and whatever, other than the talking points that maybe she picked up from in brainwashing Sunday school or on her birthright trip if she went on one. That's what I think.
And you get comments like this that say, go home, Hamas, stop killing Palestinians and Jews, leave Gaza. Now that's a march I'd like to see. Well, do you acknowledge that there is an actual occupation?
It's not,
Gaza?
No, there's an occupation of the West Bank. Gaza is a concentration camp. And while we're all sitting here focusing on Gaza, the crap that's going on in the West Bank has been escalating off the charts, because I think that ultimately that's why they had taken their eye off the ball, if that even happened. On the South side, when on October 7th, you know, which to people like Amy Schumer was the start date of all of this. But yeah, this is what's going on. You know, you call it an occupation. It's not. What you're calling occupation is the West Bank. That's an occupation. Gaza is a concentration camp. But the settler violence against Palestinians in the West Bank has been off the charts. An inordinate amount of children. I don't know the numbers anymore. I know there are over 3,500 dead babies in Gaza. And that doesn't account for like over 1,000 that are just buried in rubble.
Yeah, they don't want to
like
really...
I hear the words coming out of my mouth, and I just...
Well, I mean, again, you cross the 10,000
I just don't even.
At this point.
I am. Yeah.
It is an unfortunate situation. We're waiting on our guest, Norman Finkelstein. You may want to text Katie and just see what's going on.
Why? Why would
because
she
he
know?
Hasn't responded, and well, she speaks to him directly. And
I'm not going to text somebody that we have to coming on. I'm not doing that unless you knew he was on with her right now, but I don't think so.
No, I'm just saying that I've messaged him.
No, then
he hasn't responded.
Then I'm not going to go hunt people down. That's not how I do it. That's not how this works. I don't do triangles. If we're stood up, we're stood up. It's happened. We've been stood up before. We'll survive.
Okay. All right. Well, we did what we needed to do. And unfortunately, he's maybe running a little late, so we'll give it a little bit of time. But obviously, there is plenty to talk about, regardless of whether Mr. Finkelstein is here or not. And so
I did have some good questions for him. I actually wanted him to explain things about like the history and stuff, because I don't think that people necessarily listen to me when I say things.
Well, we're going to do what I consider to be a combined topic of discussion right now. And again, we're hoping that Mr. Finkelstein will obviously be here pretty soon. He was supposed to be here a few minutes ago, but you know, things happen. It's the middle of the day and anything is possible. But I want to show you what a cause and effect happens when you go after one person and then have the rhetoric coming from another person. So I want you all to understand that, I mean, I've met Tulsi Gabbard multiple times. You know, we've had conversations before. And while I think that there are some things that she's addressed over the years that were of considerable validity, there is no question that she is as opportunistic as anybody that you're going to see in politics today. And it's even more strange because she's not even sitting in a congressional position where she feels she has to protect her job. I don't know what the hell she's up to or what her thought process is, but
maybe it's just who she is. Like, did it?
Oh, I'm not saying that she isn't who. I'm not doubting that.
I mean, you know, maybe she's just being her.
So we're going to play a clip for you guys right now, and this is going to show you point blank just how sinister and evil some people can be. Where it's not just about we have to protect the Israelis, we have to go after people who don't align with where we stand. That's the real
Right.
danger
That's it.
here.
It's not defense. It's offense.
Oh, offense times 10. Here we go.
I don't know if Kamala knows what she's up to, but the reality here is when you look at things like what Representative Cori Bush is saying, what the Squad is saying, what so many of these other people are saying who are accusing Israel of committing a genocide, it is the height of hypocrisy because they're apologists and supporters of these Islamist Hamas terrorists who are calling for a genocide, the extermination of all Jews, not just in Israel, but around the world. And we're seeing this being carried out by these violent mobs and threats and other things that are happening against Jewish people literally around the world. And the worst part is they're doing this under the guise of, well, we care about innocent people and we don't want people to get hurt, when in fact, they are, in essence, supporting and apologizing for the barbaric actions of Hamas against innocent women, children, and civilians.
I called it creating the monster, like they're Dr. Frankenstein. And now the monster in their progressive wing is turning against them. But they're trying to pretend like this is kind of a shocking development. It's not a shocking development. No. This has always been there, but it's also deeply anti-American, is it not?
It is, and it is against the very foundational principles and values of who we are as a country. These Democrats, they have called people like me an Islamophobe for many years just for speaking the truth about radical Islam, about the threat that this Islamism poses to the freedom and peace and security of the American people and people around the world.
Well, do you believe, as do some of these Republicans in the Senate, that we should be bringing in more Afghan refugees? We brought in, what, 80, 90,000? We didn't vet any of them. I'm sure some of them are great people and helped us in Afghanistan. But do we have 80,000 interpreters or drivers? I mean, I don't think so.
There are many, unquestionably.
Yeah.
But just like we're so concerned about Biden's open borders and the fact that we've got millions of people coming in who are not vetted in any way, shape, or form, who have not been checked.
But they don't share our values, to Nigel Farage's point as to what you're seeing in England.
Right.
This is, they say, oh, you can't call it a clash of civilizations. Why not? It is a clash of civilization. No women's rights, no belief in pluralism, the dignity of the individual, free expression, none of that.
No.
That's not on the table.
No, and that is the hypocrisy of seeing these, the LGBTQIA activists out there holding and waving the trans flag combined with the Palestinian flags. Like that's a new level. They don't know and understand what this Islamist ideology is, this radical Islam ideology where they actually want to kill people. They want to kill those people specifically.
Tulsi, they have to tie Ukraine to Israel because they know Ukraine
won't stand on its own.
It's not
that funding and again, they're trying to cheat the American people through their representatives by saying, okay, you support and you want to stand with Israel. Well, guess what? We're going to sneak in all of this other money that we're going to take out of your pocket and your bank account to go and support something that increasingly Americans are understanding.
It's not
this
working.
Proxy war against Russia is pushing us closer to nuclear war, and it's not in our best national security interests to do that.
Yeah. She has a lot to say, but a whole lot of crap.
And especially for somebody, remember, her role,
God.
And the esteemed Mr. Finkelstein is here, so we'll bring him in a minute. What you guys have to remember, and this is very important, this is not somebody who is just some pontificator on television giving you their opinion about war. This is somebody who serves our country. And she doesn't just serve, she goes into combat zones as a medic. This is a person who literally sees death up front and in person very often. And she's out there saying, let's kill some more people. It's like John McCain reincarnated. It's like the same effing thing. It's like you don't learn from anything. And
well, I don't know if it's a combination of being desensitized and then the fact that we're so good at othering people to the point where literally, and I mean literally these people believe that Israeli babies are more valuable than Palestinian babies. Like they actually, I think they actually believe that.
And so now what you're going to see is the response that this type of rhetoric gets. And when this ad is over, we will bring in Mr. Finkelstein. This is the ad that they are now playing in the greater Detroit metro area against Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib for having the gall to stand up for free Palestine.
She's one of only 7 Democrats in Congress to vote against missile protection for Israel. one of only 9 Democrats against condemning the brutal attack on Israel by Hamas. Her legislation would allow the terrorists to rearm themselves, and she refuses to answer even this horrific question.
You can't comment about Hamas terrorists chopping off babies' heads?
Tell Rashida Tlaib she's on the wrong side of history and humanity.
Oh, DMFI. Oh,
And
you are
they will play that ad on loop every hour on the hour.
Yeah, the reason she won't answer that question about decapitating babies is because it's a stupid, ridiculous question. That's why.
Norman Finkelstein, welcome back to Generational Change.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so immersed in answering emails for hours and hours and hours and hours that even though I have the notice right in front of me, I spent all day, don't forget 1:15, I forgot. I won't be able to be long, and you're just going to have to excuse me. I'm not going to try to make excuses, but I'm just completely overwhelmed, and I have basic daily tasks to do that I'm not getting done, and like paying my rent, which I should have done yesterday. I'm very old-fashioned. I'm a stickler and a punctual about things like paying your bills and paying rent. So I'm way out of it.
Okay, so let's get to some of the stuff that I really wanted to ask. What do you feel the need to ask?
I obviously wanted to just get your commentary, because of all of this pro-Israel build-up, you get this advertisement that's basically saying that Rashida Tlaib not only doesn't belong in Congress, but that she should basically be tried for treason. Like, that's the type of ad this is. I'm not convinced it's going to work in her district because her constituents really love her, but the rhetoric is so dangerous, and this idea that they think that it's only against Jews. Only Jews are being persecuted. The amount of anti-Muslim rhetoric, this is 9/11 all over again as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. I'm going to make a few comments. I'm going to go on at greater length than I normally do, and I normally go on at great length. So you'll forgive me, but this will, I think, maybe provide some perspective on the question that you just raised. Number one, I'm going to start with a criticism. I did hear Rashid Tlaib's speech to a crowd of people. I guess it was about a week ago, and the so-called left has been so contaminated, infiltrated by this woke politics, that if she framed her remarks, I felt, in such a narrow, parochial way. She said, we Muslims and we Arabs, we're outraged. And it's as if you have to be a Muslim or an Arab to feel outrage at the fact that 8,000 people have been killed in Gaza, of whom more than 3,000 are children. In fact, I came across the statistic today, which I found kind of astonishing, that in the 20 months of the Ukraine war, 550 children have been killed. I think the exact number, I can get it for you, is 568. And in just 3 weeks, 3,500 Palestinian children have been killed. So, it's things like that that cause me to wonder, why are you casting this as we Muslims and Arabs and not any reasonably sane, decent human being being outraged by this? And I feel it's the contamination and the infiltration of this woke identity politics that once again is proving to be a complete catastrophe for anybody who is identified with the left tradition. The left tradition would never cast it as Muslims and Arabs being specially outraged. But now let's get back to the question that the tape. On the question of why she won't condemn. I'm not sure what her most recent statements are, so I don't want to speak and say she didn't condemn. But I'm going to ask you just to bear with me with an analogy, okay? So let's take the case. Your name is, can you give me either of your names?
I'm Jen.
I'm Peter.
Okay. So let's say there's Jen. Jen lives next door to a couple. She's lived there for 20 years. Okay? And she's actually never seen the wife. She knows there's a couple living next door to her. She's seen the husband go off to work in the morning. She never saw the wife. And every once in a while, every year or so, she hears these screaming and yelling coming from the house. She can't figure out what's going on. How can it be? I've been living here all this time. I've never seen her. I know she lives there. I know there's a wife living there. So then she calls the police because she knows something strange is happening. The police go to the house and she then calls the police precinct. Well, what happened? So the police say, well, it's a domestic dispute and we don't want to get involved. Now, you folks might find that strange, but believe me, in my generation, that's exactly what it is. The police would come, see a husband batter a wife. No, because the wife had black eyes and all the earmarkings of having been battered. The police would not interfere. It was called a domestic dispute. In my day, the expression was, I'm sure you've heard the expression, but it's not so old. It was my generation. A man's home is his castle. And that meant that what went on inside that home was nobody's business. So one day Jen gets up and she goes next door, knocks on the door, and she sees the woman answers the door. And the woman looks emaciated, clearly battered, hopeless, despondent. And the woman says, I'm sorry, my husband told me I can't talk to you, and just closes the door. Okay? And this is going on for like 20 years. And believe me, growing up, that actually did happen. By the way, even to respectable families, the stories I could tell. Okay?
Yeah.
One day, Jen comes home from work, and the home of her neighbor is surrounded by police. It turns out the wife in that home stabbed her husband 100 times. 100 times. And then the headlines in the newspaper, the lurid headlines, monster woman stabs husband 100 times. Okay? And then, of course, Jen being a neighbor, the reporters come to her home and ask her, so what do you think of what happened? That woman, what a monster. And Jen reserves judgment, doesn't join in. And the reporter says, wait, you don't think she's a monster? Is something wrong with you? Are you one of those feminists? You think stabbing your husband 100 times is okay? And that's the position Rashid Tlaib is in.
Yeah.
Because all you want to see is monster woman stabbing her husband 100 times. But you don't want to talk about the 20 years that the people of Gaza have been immured in a concentration camp. You don't want to talk about the fact that those Palestinian young men who burst the gates of Gaza, they were born in a concentration camp. They weren't incarcerated in it.
Yeah.
They were born into a concentration camp. They were born into a parcel of land which is 25 miles long, a little shorter than a marathon, and 5 miles wide. They were born into among the most densely populated places on God's earth, more densely populated than Tokyo. They were born into a place where nobody can go in and nobody can go out, with the rarest of exceptions. They were born into a place where half the population are children. Half the population are children. They were born into a place where 70% are refugees from the 1948 war, when Israel expelled the indigenous population, and the descendants of those refugees. They were born into a place where half the population suffers from what's called extreme food insecurity. They were born into a place where half the population is unemployed and 60% of the youth are unemployed. So the bottom line is they were born into a place with no past, no present, and no future. Because as people want to forget that for the past 3 years, Gaza vanished from the headlines. All the talk was about the deal that was going to be brokered between Israel, the US, and Saudi Arabia. Or there was talk of the Abraham Accords. The people of Gaza were just left to languish and die. If you don't like the term concentration camp and you don't like the term open air prison, then just imagine a game preserve. The people of Gaza were confined to a game preserve to languish and die. That is, so to speak, the background story, which, when you're asked the question, weren't those beheadings, even though we don't know there were beheadings, but we'll leave that aside, weren't those beheadings horrible? Incidentally, just as a point of fact, the largest slave uprising in American history is the Nat Turner Rebellion. And you know, the Nat Turner Rebellion, there's no question, there were a lot of babies beheaded. There were a lot of babies beheaded. And yet, I'm not going to go through all the history because time doesn't allow. But the fact is, the Nat Turner Rebellion now occupies an honored place in American history. Even though Nat Turner gave the order, kill all whites. That was his order. And they proceeded to kill about, pretty brutally, about 60 white people before finally the reaction set in and then the white went berserk. You know, the slaves, they had raised their head. And of course, also brutal. Like Israelis now, they went berserk and then proceeded to kill about 120 whites, severing their heads and putting it on poles, you know, not unlike what the Israelis are doing now, a kind of bloodlust revenge. So I can understand the situation that Rashid Tlaib is in when she doesn't want, assuming she hasn't. Now, I don't know where her statements are, but speaking for myself, I've refused to do it. I've recognized an atrocity of a significant magnitude occurred, but if you want me to take the second step and condemn the perpetrators, that would be like asking me to condemn the battered wife who for 20 years was confined to that home, terrified of her husband, and the outside world, it's a domestic affair. We can't interfere. You know?
Yeah, I heard you talking about that, and I respected it a lot, and I completely agree. I think I always say, if I were born in a concentration camp and I were taught that these are my captors, these are the people that are keeping us here, yeah, I'm pretty sure I would dig tunnels, try to get out, and be angry enough to be killing people. So it's really hard to, condemn that behavior when you are part of the system that has created that. And I definitely am. I am part.
I have a very short temper. If my internet goes out for 3 hours and my internet provider doesn't fix it, I want to strangle them. Now, okay,
Right.
You can say that's metaphorical, but sometimes it comes close to more than metaphorical.
Yeah.
No, imagine you're sitting in this place, and unfortunately, because of internet, you're seeing everybody in the world having a good time, at least sometimes. People work hard, so forth. But there is a joyous occasion. There is a dinner out, a party, something. And all you have is 25 miles by 25 miles by 5 miles. That's all you have, with the most extreme poverty for 20 years. It started in 2006, this extreme blockade imposed on Gaza. And the last question is, you have these the last comment, excuse me. You have these reporters trailing after her. Are you going to condemn? Okay,
Right.
Are you going to condemn? Well, 3,500 children have been killed in Gaza. Do people trail after Chuck Schumer? Do they trail after Nancy Pelosi? Do they trail after Joe Biden? Are you going to condemn 3,500 children? You're going to tell me that was all because they were targeting Hamas? No, please don't say that.
I don't believe this still, really. I don't think people believe that. I think a small group in an echo chamber is listening to whatever that is, but the world does not believe that. You can't look at these bomb craters in the middle of Gaza with babies there and think, oh, we're going after Hamas. If you are that incapable and that incompetent in terms of going after who you're going after, then you don't deserve to have self-defense. You should have your weapons taken away from you.
Norman, do you feel that that it's all plausible deniability, or do you think that there is something more sinister going on? Because I can't imagine. I mean, listen, you're in New York City. Some of these extremely affluent, even famous people, they really do live in this confined bubble from the rest of society. And that bubble is being pierced right now, and they don't like it. But I can't imagine that they are this naive to what is going on. And the fact that the president of the United States says, well, I don't believe that 8,000 innocent Palestinians were killed.
He doesn't believe their numbers.
Yeah, it's like
maybe
6,000 were killed. So in that case, it's not as bad. It's this irrational justification for what's happening, and the fact that no one, and this is something I would love to hear your thoughts on, no one even dares to address the fact that Netanyahu's government has been funding Hamas for the longest time to be able to create a scenario where they were hoping for something like this, where they could commit an ethnic cleanse and get away with it. I just can't imagine that there is that many naive people out there who are still espousing this bullshit.
I think one has to make a distinction between the people in power, sometimes called the elites, and ordinary people. Judging from conversation, I'm not a social butterfly. Even when my super, who's from Jamaica, and the painter came to my apartment because some things needed to be repaired. I have a wonderful relationship with the workers in my building, but we never talk politics. We talk mostly about weather, actually. But I was struck that at one point, he said to me, this was last week, he said, what do you think about what's going on in Gaza, in that place, And there's obviously a lot of unsettled feeling about what's going on there now. And also, I have to say, and I'll say it on every occasion that has availed me, that the demonstration by Jewish Voices for Peace last Friday night at Grand Central Station was just totally magnificent. I'd never beheld a sight like that. I don't know all the logistics, and it was a complicated event from the logistical point of view, but somebody must have brilliantly orchestrated in terms of its aesthetics. That was, you know.
Are you a member? I'm a member of JVP. I sit in on their meetings quite a bit. It's an amazing group of people, and the majority of the people that are really like running stuff have been doing this a long time. Like there's definitely a long history of organizing that has come together in a very brilliant fashion.
Utterly brilliant. No, I'm not a member because, first of all, it's a young people's organization.
No, it is not at all. Oh my God, you are so wrong. The majority of people are actually my parents' age. When you are wrong, Rosalind Pichesky, 84. She just got her.
I know Roz.
So you know.
Yeah, but Roz is a bit of an outlier. She's 81. I think she's going to smack you.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm so sorry I did that. Oh my goodness. Oh my God. But no, I mean, I think you're wrong. I've been on the call with 800 people and it looked like at least 50% were my parents' generation. I'm just saying.
Okay, you might be right, but I've had experience with Jewish Voices. I had some differences. I was just writing my brother in Chicago because he just joined and he asked my opinion. But whatever quibbles or reservations or differences I had, they vanished on Friday night. That was just a magnificent sight to behold. And now to get back to your question. So I think it's quite clear at the popular level, its stock is plummeting. This is Black Friday for Israel, what's happening with public relations. At the elite level, I think it's quite complicated because you have to remember that, as of course you know, Israel is a critical U.S. ally in the Middle East. And its showing on October 7th was a complete catastrophe. Gaza, as we know, is a tiny place. And it's the most surveilled place on God's earth. The most advanced cutting-edge technology is used to surveil that place. And not just the technology. Gaza used to be run by what's called the Palestinian Authority. And the Palestinian Authority lost elections in 2006. But a lot of their supporters remained behind, which means there was a huge amount of what's called human intelligence, all of these collaborators with Israel who were still in Gaza. And nonetheless, it's a kind of very hard to conceive. Gaza is very densely populated, and everybody is related to everybody because each family, it's about the average family, I think, is 7 people. So they're marrying other people in the area. So everybody ends up being married to everybody. And yet Hamas was able to conceal an operation. They say, I don't think I have reason to doubt this particular statement of theirs, they had been planning it for 2 years. And the number of people who burst the gates of Gaza, it had to be around 2,000 because Israel said it killed 1,500 militants and there were about 290 hostages, which means there had to have been militants taking the hostages back. So you get a figure of about 2,000. And this whole thing, what I just described, passed unnoticed by Israeli intelligence. So it was a complete, from the strictly military intelligence point of view, it was a complete catastrophe. And Israel has this concept, it's called deterrence capacity. And deterrence capacity is just a fancy term for the fear the Arabs have of Israel. And each time there is a Arab quote unquote victory, it diminishes the deterrence capacity. And then you have to do something spectacularly evil to increase the deterrence capacity. Well, what happened on October 7th was a catastrophe from the point of view of deterrence capacity. How could these people locked in a concentration camp for 20 years, nothing goes in, nothing goes out without Israeli surveillance, all of these technologies focused on watching every single step, every single move of every single person in Gaza, and they eluded it all. So from the point of view of Israel and the United States, Israel has to do something spectacularly evil in order to restore the deterrence capacity. And the other thing is, aside from Israel's role in the Middle East, there is the question of Jewish donors for Biden. And that's not trivial. I mean, you see it right now. I mean, now you see it out in the open. I'm not going to personalize this, and I'm going to have to leave in 5 minutes. I'm not going to personalize this, but, you know, when I was denied tenure in 2007, you knew the Board of Trustees and other actors in Chicago were applying pressure on the pool to deny me tenure. But you could never prove it. You know, these things are done very subtly behind closed doors. Like, you know that guy Finkelstein on your faculty? I heard he's up for tenure. You're not going to be giving that guy tenure, are you? You know, like that.
Yeah.
Now when you watch what's unfolding before your eyes, the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, Columbia, all the alumni, and this is no exaggeration, they're talking about withholding $100 million at a shot, $50 million at a shot. They say if you don't come out with a statement condemning what was done to October 7th, you're not getting any money from us. If you're going to let those student organizations chant those chants, you're not getting any money from us. And now take those figures and multiply it tenfold and 100-fold. And that's the pressure that's being put on Biden. So just from the point of view of the coming election, he goes to Israel. Yes, in part, it's to shore up an alliance with a critical ally at a point where that ally has been spectacularly exposed for its weakness. That's true. Sends over 2 aircraft carriers because there is a considerable worry. Is Israel any longer even a fighting force? Is it even a fighting force, or is it going to have to depend on the U.S.? But also, I think there is that consideration of the donors to his reelection and needing that money.
Let me ask you before you go, we have someone who wants me to have you clarify, and I know that you've said this before, but what your issue is with BDS. One of the biggest issues I have is that we have lost our rights in this country, our First Amendment rights. I think 26 states have anti-BDS legislation on the books, which is just, it's beyond offensive.
Debbie loves that one.
Yeah, well, our congresswoman loves that. So, you know, I know that you have a different kind of nuanced take on BDS, and I respect that. So somebody's asked in our chat wants me to ask you your take on BDS.
I don't want to get involved. As I said a moment ago, I had my reservations. I had my quibbles with Jewish Voices for Peace. They vanished on Friday night. I don't want to get into what I consider a distraction now on BDS. There is I'm very careful in my use of language, and I've never used terms like genocide. I kind of steer away from anything that sounds like a cliche. I never use settler colonialism. I never use Zionist. I just find these phrases, they're sterile. For me, they feel sterile and they don't resonate with people. However, I do think it's accurate to describe what's going on now in Gaza as a genocide. And so long as that's the case, I think we should, in the words of the old spiritual, keep our eyes on the prize, which is to say, we need to focus all attention on trying to stop the genocide in Gaza and set everything else aside right now, my opinion.
No, well, I agree too. And my take on BDS has always been that I only got really enraged when we were being told we can't participate in it. just as a matter of principle. But I appreciate that. And again, we had one of our regulars that just wanted me to ask. So thank you.
You know, it's amazing to close on this note. But when you think about kind of where the arc is bending right now, and Jen is actually going to be in D.C. for the Free Palestine rally on Saturday, you know, considering what you've had to go through over the last several decades, the fact that the arc for such a long time was bending towards the likes of Dershowitz, and now it has swung in the almost the completely opposite direction to where your righteousness is what will win the day, and he is the embodiment of what is on their way out.
I'm always so thankful for you for that. You will forever be like, he is such a complete douche. And I am so thankful for you for always like it pleases me to no end. Like, I can't even tell you. So I appreciate that.
And it's always great to have you here. And we hope to have you again soon as well.
Being a better person than Alan Dershowitz, an honor along the lines of the tallest building in Wichita, Kansas. It's just not very difficult to be a better person than Alan Dershowitz. So thank you, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Norman.
Thanks, Norman. I appreciate you. And you know, it's funny that he puts it that way. But the truth of the matter is, there was a significant part of his career where he was considered the outlier, and Dershowitz was considered, oh, no, what he says is correct.
And I would like to say kudos to my dad, Jay Pilchik, who always thought Dershowitz was a piece of shit, always, and always said so. Was very sharing of that too, so I appreciate that.
Funny little story about Mr. Dershowitz. You know, if you guys remember a pretty popular movie in the early 90s called Carlito's Way with Al Pacino and one of the biggest douche canoes of them all, Sean Penn, all due respect.
Okay, you know what though, but seriously?
No, Sean's a hell of a talent. I wouldn't take
No, and I would also argue that the people of Haiti would beg to differ.
Yes. Well, listen, he's a douche. That doesn't mean that he doesn't do good things.
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
He's just not a people person.
Definitely not. But he played the role of the Jewish attorney who was Carlito Brigante, Puerto Rican, bad guy character in Carlito's Way. Well, the way that this particular Jewish lawyer was depicted by Sean Penn did not sit very well with Mr. Dershowitz. In fact, he threatened to sue the production company of Carlito's Way because they thought that they were not giving a fair representation of him in the movie.
You know what? I think we should call him Dershowitz.
Dershowitz. That's good.
I know.
That
we
works.
have our own personal here that we use the.
Yes, well, we'll link to that. But in this case, you know, we're very even in the short 30 some odd minute time that we had to speak with Norman, you get to see what the real essence of Jewish culture is really all about.
Yeah, I mean, his parents were Holocaust survivors.
Right.
His family, this is, I mean, these are people that really have walked the walk. They understand. It's not like you can't say, oh, they haven't had this shared lived experience as all of these, you know, such righteous Jews as Amy Schumer. He hasn't lived her tragic life experience.
And to piggyback on that, and why that is so significant, is because today, actually, within the last, I think, probably 2 to 3 hours, we actually had the first member of the upper chamber of the United States Congress decide that they are also going to call for a ceasefire. And the person who called for it is going to shock the hell out of you.
I think a lot of people listening to people in power, President, you, Secretary Blinken, calling for a humanitarian pause, are asking themselves, why is that different from a ceasefire? 2 years ago, 2021, during an escalation of violence between Israel and Gaza, you called for a ceasefire and you said you, quote, couldn't disagree more with Netanyahu's policies, quote, when it came to the treatment of Palestinians. Is a ceasefire needed now?
I think it is, at least in the context of both sides agreeing. For example, the release of those who have been kidnapped should be part of this, immediate release. That should be the beginning of it. An effort should be made to engage in conversation between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Let's face it, this has gone on for decades. Whatever the rationale from the beginning, it has now reached an intolerable level. We need to have a resolution in the Middle East that gives some promise for the future.
Have you told the president, the White House, you think it's time for a ceasefire? Because that is a word that the president is intentionally not using.
Well, believe me, what I said earlier about ceasefires under circumstances, for example, the release of those who have been kidnapped as part of it, indication that this is a good faith effort on the part of the other side. But no, I've not communicated with the White House on that.
Well, they heard you now. Senator Lindsey Graham on CNN this week.
Yeah, they heard him loud and clear. And credit to Poppy Montgomery, because listen, I don't want to give CNN much credit for anything, but credit to Poppy Montgomery for asking him the specific words, do you support a ceasefire? And even if he says, yeah, I think it's time, even to get somebody to admit it, good. Now you have him on record. And the fact that Dick Durbin said ceasefire before Bernie effing Sanders, God damn it. What is wrong with people?
Well, Bernie and Fetterman have been very disappointing on this in particular. I mean, we've talked about that before. It's very disappointing. But the truth is, again, I take beef with every single Jew in Congress at a level that I am so enraged. I'm so angry.
And Dick Durbin is not just some run-of-the-mill politician. You know, the guy's one of the most powerful Democrats in the country. And the fact that he said what he said is a big step.
The word pause, that is like the most pussy thing I've ever heard.
Just say ceasefire.
How about just saying, we're done financing your genocide.
Or that.
Bye-bye. How about that?
Rand Paul, where are you?
How about we stop sending money to Israel until they get in line with international law? How about that? I'll even give them 67. We'll go back to, pre-67. We can go back to that. We don't even have to go all the way to the argument of, 48. But like, seriously, as soon as Israel gets in line with international law, then we could talk like us supporting them again. We're on a pause. That's like on Friends. We're on a break. Like, what does that mean?
Well, it is kind of.
Oh, it's infuriating.
It is kind of interesting when you think about it. If the United States, which gives about $4 billion annually to Israel, if they were to withhold that money, you know how fast everything would change?
But they just sent a few dollars to the Palestinians.
Oh, well, and they're giving them some humanitarian aid.
They're letting a couple trucks in.
Yeah. Do you know what the Israeli armed forces are doing? Have you seen what they're doing? They are literally dumping sewage on top of the Palestinian civilians.
Well, and let me be very clear, that's been happening in the West Bank for decades. There is, I forget the name of the town, Kim Iverson has covered this, Abby Martin has covered this, like there's a town, one of the settlements in the West Bank was literally built on top of, they put grates down so that their settlement is on top of the Palestinian village, and they dump their trash and their sewage and everything down into the village. I, for the life of me, cannot remember the name of the town. This is a thing. It's so no, this doesn't surprise me that that's happening now in Gaza, but dropping bombs.
I would agree with you. We have questions. That's probably possible. I would not doubt it, actually. It's kind of.
Yeah, that's very possible. That is very possible.
Dropping bombs
is not self-defense.
It's not.
When you're,
it's frankly very cowardly.
What it is they're shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah,
they're shooting fish in a barrel. It's the most cowardly, disgusting display. It's honestly, it's so beyond embarrassing. I don't even I can't even say it. I just want to jump out of my skin.
It's
I'm
like
so
everything
disgusted.
that we find that
so
people
angry.
decide is an important topic to talk about when it comes to a particular politician. So, for example, when people talk about Donald Trump and the things that he's been up to and the various crimes and misdemeanors that he's been involved in, I can assure you that overwhelmingly, almost everything that he's being charged with right now is absolute bullshit compared to real crimes like the violation of the Emoluments Clause, which is what I've been talking about forever, where basically there are no rules when it comes to money from foreign governments. And the relationship that people like to talk about that President Biden has with Ukraine, and it's very real. The same can be said of President Trump and his relationship through his intermediary, Mr. Jared Kushner, son of another huge criminal in the financial world, is doing the same thing with Saudi Arabia. It is the same bullshit. Those are the real crimes. And those are the ones that are never going to get talked about because, like we just saw, lo and behold, what was the vote that was just cast in Congress the other day? They decided that there was not enough evidence to expel George Santos from Congress.
I don't understand
how many crimes, no matter how many indictments, no matter how much dead to rights they have on this man?
And for people who have been following, and you know my take on it, I think he's Andy Kaufman. Like I just don't, or some similar thing. Like that the whole thing is a hoax. He cannot be real. Like
it's just one big act.
That's what I feel like. I feel George Santos is Andy Kaufman.
But remember, they can't kick him out because they would be anti-Semitic-ish. You don't want to cross that line.
You don't want to be anti-Semitic-ish.
Because he totally can play that card if he wanted to.
Because he's, Jew-ish.
Gay-ish. Hispanic-ish. No, he's... Well, listen. First he went... You should have seen him on the campaign trail.
How about let's just say for what he is. He's ish.
Yeah, no, listen.
He's just ish.
Like I said, you don't want my Irish side coming out in a number of instances. But, look at the way that Mr. Santos, if that is his real name, which I'm sure it isn't, the way that he would talk when he was on the campaign trail versus the way he talks now with the overt lisp in everything that he does. As if to say, you can't make fun of a gay man. You can't do that.
This is why I think the whole thing is a hoax. I do. And there is something like...
But I also want to get back to a point that I can't remember who it was in the chat. We've had a
great
chat.
If you guys are awesome. Williams and Robin Williams was in town.
Patch Adams? Oh, of course. Well, I would be hysterical. But my point is, the reason why I believe that Mr. Finkelstein does not dabble in the woke stuff, and we know what he's talking about. Again, it's like Karine Jean-Pierre would be the best example of that. Karine Jean-Pierre, gay, lesbian, immigrant, person of color. No, it's a culture. Okay. And so as a result, you are now in a bad situation because all of this woke stuff that you've been doing for the longest time, well, guess what? Now you're seeing what happens when the only thing that matters is whether or not you're checking off a box, not about the actual substance, which is why Karine Jean-Pierre has equivocated what happened in Charlottesville to the same thing as people promoting free Palestine.
Is that the press secretary?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't watch her.
Same thing.
I don't watch that.
So I totally understand where Norman is coming from. That doesn't mean he hates gays or the LGBTQ community or that people are suffering or people who want to use pronouns. None of that shit. What he's talking about is that most of that stuff is a distraction that's been co-opted by the powers that be. Now there are people within those movements who are being very loud about what's going on in Gaza. And the people in power who have been building up these individuals, don't have to name any names, you know who the big accounts are on social media that basically have used it as a springboard for their careers. But for any of them that are stepping up right now, and don't forget, some of these snot-nosed little brats are still going out there talking about how Joe Biden's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Even right now, even in this moment, they're still saying, what a great president Joe Biden is. How he can't do anything.
You know
wrong.
what? I think that if anybody suggests that I support Joe, I'm just going to have to pause on that. I'm just going to pause.
Yeah, pause.
We'll pause.
And listen, we like Vosh. We have had very solid conversations with him. Vosh, with all due respect, you're way out of line putting out a video saying, in spite of the genocide that is happening in Gaza right now, you still have to vote for Joe Biden next November. Dude, what the frick are you doing?
I'm not that angry about it because I like Vosh, but I don't agree with that. Yeah, there is no supporting Joe Biden. It's that
that ship sailed a long time ago.
Yeah, it sailed with the railroad workers.
Oh, right. Of course, absolutely.
It sailed with the railroad workers, I'd say the Willow Project, the Mountain Valley Pipeline, the Nord Stream Pipeline. There's a lot of things.
And not only that, but if you look at the video, it was a very short clip, and we played it at the beginning of the live stream. Rabbi Jessica Rosenberg stands up at this event on behalf of Jewish Voice for Peace and says we must have a ceasefire. And you have Joe stumbling and mumbling. Again, everybody's focused on the very privileged women in the audience hissing and saying, shut up and get out of here. That was $1,000 a ticket to get in there, by the way. So as I've been saying, it's a class sport, nothing more. That's my tagline. And so you have the president who's up there saying, I told Bibi that we have to have a pause. That's where that started from.
We have to have a pause.
We have to have a pause.
We have to have a pause in our $100 billion war so that we could let in, $100 million of aid to the people that we're killing.
If you can, without question, just recognize how bad this is, and it's bad. Seeing through the woke means seeing through the stuff that isn't directly correlated with the economic plight of this country. people are judged based on things that they, in many cases, have no control over. You know, you have people, and again, there are people that we rub elbows with that this is a line in the sand for a lot of people, and it should be, because there is no justification for this. And you want to know why certain people like that are not speaking up about it? Because they are attached at the hip to the Democratic Party establishment. And they know that Biden and his administration will die on the Israel Hill. They will not move from it.
I mean, and you look at ads put out by DMFI and AIPAC, and, you know, it's people are scared of that. People are scared of that.
Great friend and supporter of the show, Guy Giverson. This is that line in the sand. And what that group of Gen Zers is going to find out very quickly is that your identity as a person doesn't mean jack shit. The content of your character, as Dr. King would say, is what will define you. Not because you have pronouns or sexual orientation or color of your skin. There are always going to be obstacles that will be thrown in people's way to get them off of the mission, which is a mission of labor and uprising of the working class of this country.
Right. This is made class solidarity.
100%.
Class solidarity. And our solidarity, class-wise, is with Palestinians. Those are the oppressed peoples. Those are the indigenous oppressed peoples. That's the class that we're identifying.
D. Barker, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit?
I don't like them either.
That's not the answer. We're not here telling you, but if you don't vote for Biden, you're going to get the Republicans.
You know what?
There has to be,
so done.
for this moment, if there never is another moment, and this is what I would say to Vosh, and I'll say it to you, and I'll say it to everybody. If there is not a political price to pay for what is happening in Gaza right now, then there will never be a political price to pay for anything that anybody does. The idea that we have legalized bribery in this country, that we cannot get a bill on the floor of Congress, and we all know if Jen was there instead of Wasserman Schultz, we would at least have some form of advancement on nothing else but the bill to make insider trading illegal.
Yeah.
Which it is illegal.
If I were in Congress, there would at least be one Jew standing for the right thing in Congress.
But as we are seeing, there are no consequences, zero, for any of these actions. No. And the amazing thing about it is that the president of the United States holds all the cards. There are people who...
And that's really sad because he can't even hold his head up.
He can't. That is if there is one thing that we must stop avoiding, is the fact that we have a commander-in-chief who is completely incompetent.
We're being driven by Mr. Magoo.
I have said from the moment this happened 3 weeks ago, if you guys have been following, what was one of the first things I said? I have been maintaining for the better part of 3 years that it is President Blinken, not President Biden. And why do I maintain that? Because the second that this coordinated attack, and take with that what you will, was put on the Israeli people, who was the first person in the United States government that went to meet with Netanyahu? It wasn't President Biden, it was President Blinken. That was the first person in what would be considered a true mass killing in the true sense of the word, because that's what it was.
And let's shout out to Code Pink for how they handled whatever that was that Blinken was sitting at, and they were holding up, they with the blood on their hands. Mm-hmm. And there has been a lot of really good actions out there and a lot of good people standing up. So it is very heartening. I was watching, per usual, guys, Democracy Now! Has been doing great stuff on what's going on. Shout out to them. And one of the people that they just interviewed literally they had him on the phone from Gaza. And this guy has 3 children, and it's like he's talking about what's going on there. And one of the things that he said was that they do see us, and they see that there are people, and they saw the Jews that came out for them in this country. And he said that it helps them and it makes them know that there's people that are on their team and that are rooting for them. So like that helped me know that what we're doing is the right thing, even if it's not necessarily solving the problem. If anything we do is showing any amount of solidarity that helps anybody in that crisis, then it's worth what we're doing. And so I was somewhat heartened to know that they see us and that they see that the whole world is not against them and that people are with them. And it is helping them. I mean, I was just sitting there. I cry about this every day. It's like, and this is like.
At some point, you have to make a stand. Everyone is afraid to take a step out. How is it, of all people, that Dick Durbin is the first to say, yeah, I think we need a ceasefire? Of all people?
I still don't understand why that's hard to say. I understand why you might want not to say something like Israel is a racist ethno-apartheid state. We shouldn't have ethno-states. I can understand. That's extreme. You might not want to take that stand. I hear you. But the idea that calling for a ceasefire, that asking for a ceasefire is taking a stand. First of all, that's not taking a stand. That's actually taking no stand.
This is one of the reasons why I have always been a very adamant supporter of Rashida Tlaib, because unlike AOC, she represents basically two districts. I know what Tlaib represents. She represents a very working class, significantly Muslim influenced area, and also, a very rough part of the Detroit metro area. And she also represents some of the affluent suburbs of Detroit, Michigan, which have a very influential, wealthy Jewish population in places like Farmington Hills and Bloomfield. And that's who that ad is targeting. And they don't give a rat's rear end, even though that is a very solid blue district. Their goal is to get the working class fighter out of Congress and get an affluent, suburban, probably white Jewish representative into that district. And they're hoping that they can fool enough people with that ad that was played by DMFI.
It'll really just depend on the demographics of that district and what and who comes out to vote.
Well, Rashida's last election, she won by 30 points.
Yeah, that's not, they're preaching to something. They're preaching to something. Then what's the district? It's probably like a blue district.
Oh, it is. I just said it's an extremely blue district.
So
they're going to try to prop up probably some type of a primary challenge.
Yeah, they won't win it. They won't be able to do that. I don't see that. And if their district is anything like what I think it is, which is probably somewhat similar to like what we saw outside of Cleveland and Beechwood and Shaker Heights in terms of like the Jewish community, they're not going to have the numbers in the primary that they would need to do. Like, I don't see that happening.
It is pretty amazing. But, if you guys have been paying attention, and one of the reasons why this ad is out there about Rashida, it's not just that. It's the fact that she basically told Biden to kick rocks next year. And that is extreme power. There is only one Republican that I can think of off the top of my head that told Trump to go kick rocks in 2020. You know who that was? The same one Republican who had the absolute courage to say we need a ceasefire. And that's Thomas Massie. And I have been saying for the longest time, I don't give a damn if you don't like the fact that he's a true libertarian. At least he has principles, which is untrue for just about everybody else.
I still cannot believe that Bernie and Fetterman are wrong on this.
How is Massie 100% right on this shit and they're completely off?
It's the whole thing.
And
we're in a bizarre
when we talk
world.
about these types of issues, you're not talking about just a little bit off. These are issues that literally can define where somebody gets support and doesn't in the political arena, and rightfully so, because that's where it should be. If you don't have the courage, and Fetterman makes absolutely no sense because he doesn't have another election for 5 damn years. This is not like this is something that's happening tomorrow. Are you so paranoid that you don't have the courage to do the right thing?
Why is AIPAC and DMFI, why are you all so scared of them?
They have a lot of money. They have a lot of influence.
So what?
But if you actually have principle and you have real support and you support the issues that matter and you're not completely engulfed in corporate special interest money, the truth will often always set you free. There are exceptions to the rule, and some people will be knocked off.
If you are so scared of keeping your job that you're not doing your job, you don't deserve that job.
We have been very clear about Nina Turner in particular, that when we went to visit and volunteer for her campaign before her second election, her first election as well. Jen was there the first time. I came with Jen the second time. It wasn't because of those ads on TV that she ended up losing the election.
No.
And that's all I'm going to say.
No, it wasn't.
So if your fear is that, well, I don't want DMFI and AIPAC and the rest of them coming after me, No, the fear is that you don't have a good enough message and you don't have a good enough infrastructure and fundraising in order to compete. You cannot compete with somebody who's going to take $5 million in corporate money. But maybe what you do need is the ability to raise $1 million, $1.5 million. And then it doesn't matter how much money the other person spends.
Right.
Because if they are going to play, and they will do that, they are going to play that ad against Rashida Tlaib on loop. They're going to play it probably every hour.
And here's the thing, though. Like that is the kind of stuff that can be anticipated. And that is the kind of stuff that you can have your campaign against. Like, that's the stuff, like, you know what they're going to do. You know that they're going to do that kind of stuff.
We're going to close with this thought. And this is very important to talk about, even though I didn't pull it up as a story for today. The real problem, Chris, is that we don't have viable third parties to choose from.
True.
Well, I got to tell you, I've been maintaining this since I went to his event last month. RFK is going to be a threat in next year's general election. And you know how I know he's going to be a threat? Because when you put out a tweet today saying that not only should cannabis be legalized, but it is also going to lead to not only expunging nonviolent drug offender records, but also that it's going to open up massive economic opportunity. I mean, statements like that, despite where he stands right now, and granted, Amaryllis Fox, his campaign manager, and his daughter-in-law have been kind of evolving on their message when it comes to Israel. Thank freaking God they are. They've basically condemned the, they're called, listen, to their credit, they said it's a genocide that's happening in Gaza.
All right, well,
at least somebody's saying it. Now,
that's at
Bobby,
least putting him a little bit ahead on that
Bobby,
issue.
Now get out, Bobby, now get out there and say ceasefire. That's the next step. You know, I wish they would understand how politically powerful, but because they don't want to feel the wrath. Because like you said, he's up. What'd you say about RFK?
What?
With Shmuley?
Oh, he's very far up Shmuley's ass. That's what I think. He's up. Oh, I say he's high up Rabbi Shmuley's tilkus.
And that's the Yiddish talk that, you know, unfortunately will
And Rabbi
resonate.
Shmuley, talk about one of the worst possible representatives of tribe. Honestly, he's despicable. He's disgusting.
Colin, if you can pull that tweet from RFK from earlier today, I want to put that up there because I think it's very important that we cover this.
Yeah, I think his issue with Israel-Palestine, I don't know how far back it really goes with him. Like, from my perspective, he sort of got called out by the likes of my congresswoman as being anti-Semitic, and then seemed to just sort of jump on the Zionist bandwagon. But then I've heard that there was stuff that he was already on that. So I don't know. I don't know enough about him to know his history on it, to know whether or not he is completely too far gone, whether or not he's amenable to understanding that maybe he's been misguided. He certainly wasn't raised Jewish, so, you know, he might have some learning to do.
22%.
Yeah, that's
that
sizable.
Serious
it's
stuff.
Sizable.
And I have maintained they will not let him on the debate stage. They will break the rules, just like certain people break rules when it comes to, you know, like screening for candidates and things like that.
I think that his people might be, I don't know. I think that when you're polling at 22% and they go to keep him off the debate stage, that's a whole lot of pushback that they're going to get for it. I don't know. That's where they'll end up canceling and not even having a debate because they don't want to have to deal with him.
Oh,
I don't see how if somebody polling it that high, they can just keep off the debate stage. I don't see how they're going to be able to do that.
Well, the fact that he, listen, Teresa, it is debatable where people stand specifically when it relates to cannabis. I look at it this way. The only way that cannabis should be legal in this country is if it permits home grow. But if home grow is not part of the equation, then there's no point.
But that's a state issue. That's the thing. These are state issues. It shouldn't even be an.
Colin, did you find it?
He's flipping.
No, it's right at the top. It's like the first thing. Okay. So here you go.
RFK, legalizing marijuana won't just get people out of jail and back to work. It can actually solve America's drug addiction problem. You think, Bobby? Let's hear it. What happened? We lost it. We had it and we lost it.
Well, it doesn't transmit audio, so I got to switch up.
Oh, that's what it is. It's a StreamYard thing. Yeah. Okay. No worries. Very good.
But you saw the headline.
So basically, he's in with it, but he's late to the party, but we'll welcome you.
Yeah. And you know what I love? I love the fact that both Trump and Biden's camps are scared to death of him because they don't know which direction the votes are going to get pulled from.
Oh,
and
I do. Both.
And from statements like this, you'll understand why.
My question to you is about marijuana.
A quarter of people in our jails in our country are people who are there for minor drug crimes, many of them for marijuana, which is now legal in many states. What I've advocated is that we should legalize marijuana. We should have a federal tax on the marijuana that is designated specifically for drug treatment and rehabilitation. And I want to build, as part of my presidency, a series of renewal centers, of detoxification, essentially, centers around this country to treat the rise in mental illness and PTSD and drug addiction that is debilitating our children. We lost 106,000 kids last year to overdoses. In the opioid overdoses, that is double the number of kids that we lost during the 20-year Vietnam War. We need to start healing our country in many ways. I think the best solution is to legalize it, make it possible for the cannabis distributors to actually bank their profits and their revenues and not force them to keep them in mattresses, which encourages more crime, and then tax it robustly so that we can pay for these, for the addiction treatment for our children. If you like this video,
He had us still muted.
That's a powerful ad.
So good for him. Good for him for finally, putting it out there just as clear as can be. I mean, again, he's definitely good on some issues. He's off on some issues. He's good on some issues. Of the choices in front of us, he's definitely looking good.
And considering where Trump is right now and Biden is right now, if it's RFK on the ballot, let me tell you something. It's not going to be impossible for him to appeal to at least 1/3 of this country. It's not. If he's at 22% right now, you really think it's a stretch to suggest that the closer we get to the finish line, that he can't get to 33, 34%? You're crazy if you think it's not possible. This country is screaming for change right now.
Yeah.
And he is the only person who's offering it. And he's the only person who I actually do believe that when he says he would legalize cannabis, as long as it includes home grow, and based on what he was showing, it had a very libertarian-esque approach to the actual issue. That's what we need to see.
Yeah.
That's it.
He's not going to get everything. I mean, look, we could, there's a lot of things I don't agree with him on. And I'm sure there would be ways in which he would go about dealing with cannabis that I probably wouldn't be psyched with. But at least he's talking about something in the correct direction, and at least he's addressing something. And I agree. Who was it who said that stoners don't need rehab? You're right. Stoners don't need rehab.
No, they just need food.
We need food. We need junk. But look, people who want rehab, it should obviously, I think it's something that should be available. But then again, I think we should all have healthcare. So I'm crazy like that. Guys, I would recommend going back. We did a show with Dr. Carl Hart, who the book that I read was called Drug Use for Grownups. And, I would say that like my sort of approach is very, very like his approach. I don't think drugs are a criminal issue. I think it's a healthcare issue. I think it's an adult issue. I think we need to just vote on the age of that. Let's say we say 21 and there you go. And then everybody of whatever adult consent age, it's your personal choice. And I think that our job is just to facilitate people having access to healthcare. That's it. That's our job. And yes, I think people that sell drugs to children, that's a crime. I mean, clearly. But for people who are 21 and above, yeah, I am of his mentality. I think that drugs should be regulated, so they're healthy through our foods, but we don't even regulate that properly. So I don't know. But yeah, drug use is not a criminal issue. It's a health issue.
Agreed. And the other thing you also have to remember about RFK is he is something different. He is somebody who isn't representing one of the two major parties.
Yeah.
He actually has, there are those who think, oh, he's just right wing. No, he's not.
He isn't, though.
He's got, the guy.
He doesn't fit in a box.
He just last week says he's in favor of reparations. Where do you want to place this?
I don't agree with what he says are reparations.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying. We could agree to disagree on that. But the fact that he even supports the concept in any way, shape, or form of repairing the harm done to the Black community. Good. That's a good step in the right direction. There was something else where I thought about him where he wasn't like completely off, but he wasn't. Yeah, he's not a right winger. And one of the first things he said was that he would pardon Julian Assange.
Yeah.
That's huge to me.
That is very huge.
That's huge. And not just Assange. He listed off, it was like Snowden. He would give him a fair trial, like all of the things that people who seek amnesty for political prisoners would want was something that he flat out said right out. And so that's really important to me too. And that is something within the authority of the executive branch. So it's something that he could actually do. So to have somebody running for president saying flat out they would pardon Assange is huge.
Yeah. And don't fear the reefer. That's a good one.
That's good. Yeah. Don't ever fear the reefer. And you know what? To me, I'll trade the Assange issue for his vax issue. Because people are very hung up on his vax issue. But he's not the kind of person that would be president and then forbid us from having vaccines.
No.
So I don't see why it matters whether or not he wants to be vaccinated. He's not, I don't think he seeks to be a dictator.
I definitely agree. I think that there's definitely more to be said for people just wanting to have choice. And that is something that it's a free market mindset. And I get that. I don't have a problem with that.
I don't love it. But again, if you're going to talk pardoning Assange and legalizing cannabis and things that are libertarian that I do like, I'm with you. Like you're already winning just because I'm looking at the other people and I'm not seeing any of that.
I think right now there's a couple of things and we'll leave on this thought. I do agree with what a lot of people say regarding Trump when it comes to the issue of Israel, that he would almost in every conceivable way be the same as Biden.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't see...
He's the one who moved the embassy
to Jerusalem.
Of course. And note, nobody moved it back.
Correct.
Note that, because that's the thing. And I was very proud of Biden.
And for those who want to say that, well, Joe this, Joe that. No, it's worse.
He could have diffused it from them. The minute that he took office, they knew what was going on. They knew what had happened. They saw what went down. They knew what happened in 2018 in Israel with the, people, what's the name of the act, the Israel Act, that's basically like the racist, we are an ethno-state and this is how it goes act. So like when Joe got in office, he knew this history and has taken 0 steps to rein that shit in over there and just keep sending them more and more money. Has taken 0 steps to not fan those flames that Trump flamed, right? Like, so he might have set that fire and Joe came in and he ain't trying to put it out.
If Bobby does not evolve on this issue, then there is only so far that he will go. But if he does,
bothers me too, but no different than the 2 we're dealing with. So if we're going to have a choice of 3 people that are wrong on issue and on that issue, but one of those people wants to pardon Julian Assange and legalize weed, then you know what I'm saying?
I believe in Israel's right to determination, but I also believe that we must have a ceasefire.
That's at least, look, they're all wrong on this. That's all I can say. They're all wrong on this.
Are wrongfully suffering, and we must protect those innocent lives. We cannot see 3,000 innocent children killed. There's no justification.
No, well, I mean,
so Bobby, if you hear my inflection for you to say that, because it is so freaking necessary. And you know what? It just takes one. It takes Senator Durbin to come out there and say, yeah, we need a ceasefire. It just takes one to start putting that into people's heads that this is where this is going.
I'd love for him to come on. Like, we've invited him. I'd love for him to come on. Please, Mr. Kennedy, please come. I would so love for you to come on and talk with me about the Israel situation. Please. You seem like a very nice Catholic man. I just think you're woefully not having the proper Jewish education.
And you know why this is so important? Because of stories like this. So as you can see, what has always been the hidden problem in our society, which is the biggest reason why nothing changes, is because we have a government bought and paid for by corporate special interests. Now, is Senator Hawley really serious about this? Do we think in any capacity that he's doing it because he thinks that Lucas Kuntz is going to be the Democratic nominee and somehow Missouri's going to flip blue in the U.S. Senate?
He probably has his own agenda, whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the issue. I think that Josh Hawley, if he is reelected to the Senate in 24, which I actually believe he will be, that he intends to run for president in the not too distant future? 100%. 100%. And he wants to have something that he can run on.
Josh Hawley, you think, wants to run for president?
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
And so, have you heard him talk?
He's just such a little wiener.
Of course, but have you heard him talk?
No.
He talks like he wants to be president. So if you look at this, look at how fucking Ted Cruz talks.
I don't listen to these people.
Mitch McConnell warns GOP senators they'll face incoming if they back Hawley bill to limit corporate giving in campaigns.
So Republican Josh Hawley, who I don't think I've ever thought about regarding anything decent ever, is, for whatever reason, putting forward legislation to basically undo Citizens United. That's basically what he's trying to do. He's trying to get the money out. Okay, so everyone here, yay, right? Like, we're on with that. And people, so this is coming from a Republican. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. And basically, he's being threatened, as are anybody else that's thinking about signing on that, by the Turtle Man, that if anybody dares try to get the big money out, we're coming for you. Which basically means we will primary you, we will get you out.
I have made it.
I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, and it doesn't mean anything worse than that. But basically, what's incoming is them outgoing.
I have made it very clear since I've been in the U.S. Senate that if anybody steps out of line when it comes to the issue of our corporate money ensuring GOP victory after victory, that you will be removed from our caucus.
Do you know when I see Mitch McConnell, I feel like you remember in like the Thriller video, the guy's arm falls off? That's what I feel like is going to happen with Mitch McConnell any moment. Like, his whole head's going to fall off. Like, he is like the Walking Dead to me.
Listen, as long as I'm here, as long as I'm breathing, I will continue to control what goes on. I am warning my fellow GOP senators that they could face incoming from the center right if they sign on to Hawley's bill.
Well, and you know what? And I think actually anybody with any smart political sense in this moment, who can feel this moment right now, would jump on that. Because that's where the winds are blowing. I think that's where the people are going to be on the right side of history. This definitely makes this guy look good. And he sucks.
Whenever the winds are blowing, I am liable to fall over and hurt myself.
So you try to avoid the blowing winds.
Stop rustling feathers and understand that the most important thing that we can do right now on the Hill in terms of bills is to pass unequivocal support for Israel and Ukraine. That is where our money must go, and the people be damned. I will not tolerate any dissent within our party.
So, in all seriousness, has anybody else signed on this? Like, who has signed on this?
As long as I'm alive, and I am alive, there will be no support for a bill that eliminates corporate money from our party.
And I am sure that there won't be a single Democrat that'll sign on this. There won't be a single Democrat that'll sign on this, just like they couldn't get any Democrats to sign on the letter wanting to know some sort of details about the money going to Ukraine. They couldn't even get a Democrat to sign on the question, maybe we should just sort of, think some things through. So, and seriously, who has signed on? No, seriously, who has signed on this? All right.
There's no one that will ever get close to signing on to a bill that I do not give approval. And why don't I give approval? Because we are not changing the infrastructure of our country as long as I am alive. And I will remain alive even after I'm dead. So there you go. And that's essentially what's going to happen. McConnell will die.
No, his body will still be there. They'll prop him up like a marionette.
But that's what's so much different about the GOP versus the Democratic Party. There really is only one, and it's McConnell. McConnell is obviously you have Chuck Grassley, but Grassley's not in the spotlight the way that McConnell is. Unfortunately, in the Democratic Party, it's a much bigger problem because you have tons of these geriatrics, if you will.
Oh, yeah, no, it's like the home for the aged, man. It's the home for the aged.
Now, do I think that Hawley is doing this specifically for political clout? Yes, I would imagine so. I don't think he's...
I want to see the senators.
Yeah.
I want to see the,
Colin, scroll down if there's any additional
information. Is there anything else in here? I want to know has anybody else signed on to this bill? Do we even know?
Scroll up for a second. I want to see what the Shum had to say. Mueller told CNN it was a mistake for McConnell to be standing with Senator Schumer in their push to tie Ukraine aid to Israeli funding package. Well, of course. What else is new? Because endless wars.
So Hawley's new bill is called the Ending Corporate Influence on Elections Act and is aimed at reversing the Citizens United decision. So, like, to me, any person that doesn't sign on that is not then able to ever say they support overturning Citizens United. And I've seen a lot of people running on that issue. There have been many people in Congress that have said they support that. So why, so then who's signing on this? Because I'd sign on that.
Josh, it's funny you say that McConnell better retire in 2028. I'm not a betting man, but I think that the likelihood that McConnell, considering his physical and mental condition at this point, I would be very surprised if he's still alive in 5 years. But that's me.
All right. Are you going to?
So an effort aligns conservative Missouri Republican with many Democrats. Hawley's bill would ban publicly traded corporations from making independent expenditures in political advertisements and ban those publicly traded companies from giving money to super PACs. In an interview, Hawley defended his bill and said that corporate influence should be limited in elections. We agree. And I think it's wrong. I think as an original matter, I think it's warping our politics. It is. And I see no reason for conservatives to defend it. It's wrong as a matter of original meaning in the Constitution. It's bad for our elections. It's bad for our voters. And I just think on principle, we ought to be concerned.
See, he's coming off looking really good. And I don't know what his district looks like, but this is somebody.
He's a senator.
No. Oh, he's Missouri.
Correct.
Okay. So he's red. It doesn't matter then. So
Pretty
why?
much. I think it matters because, as I said, I think he intends to
I at least knew he was from Missouri.
Yeah, I think Hawley definitely intends to run for president, and he wants to have something on his record that he can hang his hat on. And let me tell you, no, I don't think he has a hide issue. No, as far as I remember. But I do think that if he were to get any type of momentum for a bill like this, that would be something to run for president on, 100%.
Yeah, somebody who has been trying to, if he is really trying, or is he just doing this as a gesture to sort of make himself look good, knowing it really won't go anywhere, and almost in cahoots with McConnell, knowing that he'd be the baddie and that it just won't go anywhere. And then he just comes off looking like he's proposing.
No, I think that there is a contingent of people in the GOP today, particularly the young guns, if you will, like the Josh Hawleys and the Matt Gaetzes of the world, who really don't want to have to be. Here's what I believe, and I believe that this is part of it. I really believe in my heart of hearts that Hawley and Gaetz want the corporate money out because they don't want to have to fundraise. They do not want to have to go to these events and literally suck people off for their money.
I understand that.
They don't want to do it. Who the hell would?
Well, here's the thing, though. If you don't do that, which I agree, then you're having to do the actual work, which is actually do the job and represent constituents, because you have to do one or the other. So if they're willing to actually do the work to maintain their position and maintain, you know what I'm saying? If you don't, you have to have support somewhere. So if you're not going to be swimming in corporate pools, then you're going to need to be doing the job to keep people voting for you.
I definitely agree. And I think that
because we ran grassroots and we worked hard.
We did. And it does not. I mean, look, do you like to have the occasional fundraiser get together where you may do, like a barbecue or something like that, and people drop $500, $1,000 if they can? Yeah, you know what? Sometimes those are necessary, and it's not so bad, especially if it's maybe like 50, 100 people, and you're having
But that's not corporate.
That's totally different.
Yeah,
that's totally different than having to pick up the phone and call somebody who's an executive at BlackRock and say, "Hey, could you give me $100,000 for my campaign? What are you going to do for us? You got this bill coming up. We got a little
something that'll just, and anything that helps them is going to hurt people.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you $200,000, but you got to vote this way on this bill. It's very important to us, if you want that." And I am assured that this is the mindset of where this is. There's no question, because the people who don't want it to change, are the old hats.
Well, and he sees an opening in terms of
course.
being a
He's
presidential person. He sees the
He's a
opening.
smart guy.
When you look at the people in that field right now, there's nobody. There really is nobody. There's nobody that's inspired. They don't have a single inspired candidate.
And you know what, Josh? I don't care if he's full of shit. What I care about is that the message is going out into the ether.
Well, right.
That's what matters. Because even if he's not really going to take the stand that is necessary, at least he's saying what is necessary.
And we're getting to see who does and doesn't agree.
Mm-hmm.
People are having to be accountable for their stand on it. And that's always helpful.
I listened to a clip of Tim Pool, and I think he did this last night. And he said, here's my olive branch to the far left. If you get on board with us for ending all wars, ending the aid to Ukraine, Israel, all of that, I will full-throatedly get behind you on universal health care.
I would suggest we could, yeah, I mean, but who, like, which leftists are he talking to? Because, like, the leftists that I know are against all those wars. The leftists that I know are people like Medea.
I don't think that there's enough people that truly understand what this is all about.
I don't know that he knows which leftists he's like. Who in his mind are the leftists that he's talking about? Because he's probably is he looking at MSNBC and calling them leftists?
And this is where we disagree. I don't need to hear this shit about pro-Putin bullshit because that's not what this is.
Who's
okay?
pro-Putin?
Because we're saying that stop the war, stop the aid to Ukraine, end the goddamn war, end it. Ukraine is being destroyed.
Let me ask somebody this. If me saying I'm pro-Putin, if me saying that just ends the conversation, then I'll seriously.
You know what? You're probably right. That's
what difference does it make who I'm pro? I'll tell you who I'm pro. I'm pro the innocent people that are living as collateral damage to an oligarch pissing match. That's what I'm for. I'm for those people.
And you don't like my music? I don't give a damn if right wingers are pro-Putin. I don't freaking care. I care about the class war. And the class war cannot be divided amongst the left and the right. Can't do it. Not going to happen.
Well, it won't. That's why we can't be successful.
Correct.
But the people in Ukraine that are just trying to go about and live their lives, that's whose team I'm on. And those are not the people that are getting help by our money going there. It's not. Our money is actually funding kind of very Nazi factions in Western Ukraine. It's really all kinds of screwed up. And I highly recommend everybody read Medea's last book that came out recently. It's literally called The War in Ukraine. I highly recommend it. It's a really good primer. But again, this is one of those things like the Israel thing. People want to go back to Russia's invasion and feel like that's the starting point. And that's just not how this works. It's people of science and history who understand nuance. No, you cannot isolate one thing. That's not how this works. So it's the same thing with Ukraine and Russia. I am not pro-Putin. I have said many times I do not care what language my oligarchs speak. The difference to me between someone like Bill Gates and Vladimir Putin is negligible. So to me, it doesn't really matter. They're a capitalist. He's an oligarch. He's a dictator-esque, for sure, person in a very authoritarian capitalist society, kind of like the one we have. It's interesting, like for somehow we've gotten away from the World War II where they were the allies and we were fighting the Nazis, and now we're arming the Nazis and fighting against the Russians.
It's really funny how people cannot put two and two together when it comes to Russia invaded Ukraine. Yeah, Russia invaded Ukraine. And that's like suggesting that came out of nowhere. Just like Hamas attacked Israel and innocent civilians.
What the F is wrong with me on Ukraine? Seriously, you need to read the history. If you do not go at least as far back to 2006, even further, and you go back to like whenever was the Minsk II agreements, and Medea talks really in depth about this in her book, which Ukraine ignored, which we ignored, and you are completely discounting the opinions and wishes of places like Crimea and the people in the Donbas region, who are Russian. And this is something that has been going on there for a long time. And that is not even to not talk about NATO and NATO expanding and us basically up Putin's ass all the time. And you know what?
Gotta have an enemy.
it's like, you know what? No, I do not support invading Ukraine any more than I like the idea and support Hamas killing innocent people. But we're not going to solve this problem if we do not address this situation. And that did not start when Russia invaded Ukraine. And us giving them more and more money and more weapons is not going to stop this. It's just going to kill more and more innocent Ukrainians. So if our money was helping Ukraine, that would be one thing. It is not helping them. It's not helping them.
Nope.
They're not winning this. It's not helping them.
It's not a question of denying them aid. It's a question of brokering peace to end this massacre.
We're not sending them aid. We're sending them weapons.
Why don't you look at where the money's going?
We're not sending them aid.
Because when BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are getting their hands on this money to rebuild Ukraine, I am pleading with anybody out there who thinks that what's happening in Ukraine is a righteous cause. You're wrong.
Henry's right. I mean, what we're backing right now in Ukraine are Nazi factions.
I'm not even concerned
But no,
about
I'm just
that.
saying, it's like, I don't think people realize what's happening because they don't know the history. I am by no means an expert, but we have had them on. Go back and look at the shows.
Again, it's the same argument. It's the same BS argument when people are like, but Hamas attacked Israel. It's like you think that this just comes out of nowhere. You think it comes out of nowhere. You have been, and let's face it, what is NATO? NATO is the United States answer to the UN. That is what it is. It is their control of the global military industrial complex. And they will not stop expanding. And the second that they suspected that Ukraine was going to jump into NATO, that's the red line. And now we have to do what we have to do. We are going to send a firm message that we will kill hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, if you think we're going to allow you to expand NATO to our border. And that was what they were trying to do, on top of the fact that Western Ukraine has trillions of dollars worth of natural resources.
No, everybody's capable of war crimes, apparently. Unfortunately, there's nobody that's incapable of war crimes, so we have been shown.
No one is justifying what's happening in Ukraine. It is wrong. There are war crimes.
But we're not helping it. What we're doing is not helping.
Just like we've brought this
we're helping the
conversation,
military-industrial complex.
Who are the people suffering the most? Who are the most people suffering in the whole grand scheme of what's going on between Russia and Ukraine? Russian and Ukrainian civilians. That's who's suffering, just like what's going on in Israel right now. Israeli and Palestinian civilians are the ones predominantly being killed. It is the same bullshit that's happening over there in Ukraine. Same thing. For anyone who thinks there's any difference between these two wars when it comes down to the crux of why this is happening, and yes, we, the United States of America, play a very sizable role in both conflicts. Why? Because we want endless war. We want this to go on. We want to control everything.
Ukrainians are not begging us for weapons. Ukrainian government is begging us for weapons.
Correct.
Ukrainian people just want this to stop. They want this to stop. And it isn't going to stop as long as we keep arming them and funding it. It's just going to keep going on and on and on until they are like all dead.
This is like if I was in that situation, if I was in Ukraine right now, would I pick up a weapon and defend myself from being killed? Of course I would. If I could get out of the country, I would. If I have to stay and fight, I fight. But you know what I am hoping for? I'm hoping for a peace resolution as fast as humanly possible. The fact that this conflict in Ukraine is almost 2 goddamn years old now. This is so insane on every level.
Yeah, and no, I don't think that the majority of Ukrainians defending themselves are Nazis. What I'm saying is the groups that we are arming in the western part of Ukraine, which is really what this is. This has been a problem in Ukraine for many years between the Russian part of Ukraine. Let's remember, people, that we just sort of would draw countries out of thin air and draw boundaries like wherever we see fit.
Correct.
Well, a huge chunk of Ukraine considers themselves Russian, and they are Russian, and they speak Russian, and they want to be Russian, and a bunch of them voted to be part of that. And then that was ignored, and that was discounted. And so you've had this sort of like civil situation in Ukraine for many, many years. This is not new. And so all of these things are happening simultaneously. And no, I do not think all Ukrainians are Nazis, but I will say this. Ukraine has an extremely dark history when it comes to anti-Semitism and Nazism and killing Jews.
World War II. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Ukraine
was with Nazi Germany.
Yeah. The Ukrainian,
that's not even
Ukraine, for people that I know, like Jews of the generation, like my parents' generation, the Ukrainians were very scary to them. It was like Germans. It wasn't, they were not the good guys in a lot of cases as far as like the anti-Semitism goes. They were bad. So there's a very, very sordid history there. And there is a very large amount of Nazism in Ukraine.
No,
and a very large amount of what we're funding is those factions, because that's who is armed and who's fighting against the Russians. We will pick whichever team is willing to fight. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter to us what they stand for. They're going to fight the Russians. We'll arm them. It's like we just pick and choose. But make no mistake, this was happening long before Russia invaded Ukraine. Like, this has been a problem there going back. I mean, 2006 or whenever. I mean, this goes back a long time.
It's again, we're not justifying Putin's invasion. So when everyone wants to go, this is like saying, again, when you use a straw man, like you're justifying Putin's invasion, or not all Ukrainian fighters are Nazis. You're using straw man arguments. This is the same argument that is being made by the Zionists saying, we were attacked on October 7th. Yes, you were attacked. Putin invaded. That's not where the story begins. That's not where it ends.
And note how nobody from this administration has tried to solve it or fix it. They just want to fund it and let it keep going. If we wanted to solve this and fix it and make it
solved it within weeks. Could have been over.
But we don't want to solve it. Nope. We want to keep making this happen because it is so profitable. So profitable. And when you look at it, and specifically like our Congresswoman, she made a fortune in the first few months following the invasion from insider trading money. She made like 64% return on her investment in 3 months. This is very profitable for them. I truly believe that if we are all that powerful, then why can't we stop this? We could. Yeah. We could get in this and really like solve this and moderate it and get in there and have some sort of ceasefire and solve this problem. We could. We know what they want. They want the regions that the Russians and Ukraine want to be Russian, and they want NATO to stop expanding. We've known that for a long time. This isn't rocket science.
Listen, we love you guys. You don't like my music, Josh the Junkie, all of you guys. And even if there are people who agree with us, JD Party Hat, Travers, Henry, again, the bottom line is this. Whatever you think you know about foreign policy, you know almost diddly squat.
We don't get to know very much.
The State Department will allow you to know very little, enough for you to form some type of a judgment that will force you to say that this side is bad and that side is good. As I said, we're not here to defend Vladimir Putin. We are not here to defend Bibi Netanyahu.
No.
So
for sure not.
What we have to remember is that almost universally, these conflicts can easily be avoided and put to rest if we lived in a world that wasn't built around NATO, also known as the global military industrial complex. Because endless war is what works. It pays beyond exceptionally well.
I'm just not with it.
Neither am I.
I'm just not with it, and I don't believe it, and I don't believe a word that comes out of it.
And you know what? Let me tell you something, guys. Sometimes when it comes to warfare, and this is something that the modern person just simply can't accept, these types of territorial disputes, if you will, have been going on since the beginning of civilization. If Russia has Kiev checkmated, then it's checkmated. We change boundary lines around the world all the time. We think that the Congo belongs to us, that we are the ones who get to control all of the cobalt and lithium mines in the world. That's our money.
I just think you really need to go back and learn the history of it. I'm not trying to. I'm not going to belabor it. I'm really not. We're not handling it well. We're just funding the war machine. That's all we're doing. And no matter what anybody says or who's right or who's wrong, we're not solving the problem.
And Josh, I'm definitely with you on the whole Azov battalion thing. Listen, that is one element of, again, does Ukraine have a Nazi problem? Yes. Is it the problem? No. And that, again, becomes the straw man of this whole problem. It's like, oh, my God, you guys are funding Nazis. Well, you're trying to It's as if we in this country
Well,
have
we fund
control
Al
of our
Qaeda in
money.
other places. Like we'll
Sure.
be against them in one place, but support them in another. We just pick and choose based on our interests. Don't think for a second that us giving money to Ukraine is because we give a shit about Ukrainians.
Well, not only that, but you talk about the money that Netanyahu has been giving to Hamas to fund them. Where do you think that money comes from? That's our money. That's our military money that goes to Israel and goes to Hamas to create this entire cluster F in the Middle East, which again is all about our position in the Middle East in order to control the territory. The same is true when it comes to our controlling of the territory in Eastern Europe, when it comes to any and all natural resources. We are the world police, and we will determine how things go, whether they end sooner rather than later, or they continue on for as long as humanly possible.
Well, we create the borders that are a lot of these problems to begin with.
Correct.
Look at Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
That's a shit show.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you make up borders and stick people on one side or another of where they would naturally be inclined to be, it's just not going to go well.
So what I would say in conclusion is that if you cannot understand how we got to a point where Russia decided to invade Ukraine, then you're just not paying attention.
And honestly, guys, I seriously read Medea's book. It's a quick read,
right.
And it's her, and I forget the gentleman's name that she wrote it with. There's two people. It's Medea and him, and it's just like a primer, and it goes back to it doesn't go back like all the way in time. It goes back to more recent times and what's going on there. But you really need to understand the background. And how and what the potential solutions are. And they do lay out some decent potential solutions for negotiating this. But none of that will happen because it's too profitable for us to keep it going.
Right. The funny thing is that if the United States did not get NATO involved in Ukraine within, I don't know, how quickly, Putin had advanced on Kiev when the invasion happened, but it was relatively fast. And there was, obviously several thousand casualties at the time.
You're having it reversed, Josh. Sorry, you're having it reversed. No, I would never say that. You're right. And again, but the people in Gaza and the West Bank didn't vote to go be part of something else.
Correct. I think that what you have here, and this is, again, we'll leave on this thought, is that Ukraine really is two countries, much like Czechoslovakia became the Czech Republic and Slovakia. And I think that is essentially the end game between Western and Eastern Ukraine.
Yeah.
You don't have to like it, but that is the reality of the world. And you know what?
They voted for it.
And if you're facing the barrel of a gun and you're going to be killed if you don't go along with it, let's see if you're willing to die for it. Because the truth of the matter is, Eastern Ukraine is ethnically Russian, almost across the board. This would not be tolerated otherwise. Now, does that mean that Putin isn't a tyrant? Of course he is. And so are a hell of a lot of other people in the world. But as I've said, this is all about global positioning of resources, money, and power.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah,
all
Russia
that
didn't
is.
colonize them. They were them.
Correct.
You just drew the line around it in a different way. It's sort of, we were just talking about this, like people when I lived in San Antonio, Mexican families that had been there for centuries that were on the same land, their family's land, when it was not part of the United States. And then we draw a line around it, and all of a sudden they're the foreigners. No, that's not how that works.
See, you don't like my music, and you just made a great point, and I am Irish, so you're right. That is the hope. That is the point. You're basically proving our point.
They want
That's
to be what they want to be, self-determination.
And this is why libertarianism and mostly RFK's form of libertarianism is gaining considerable steam in this country. You know why? Because we can't keep our freaking noses out of other people's business. And there are a lot of people in this country who are now starting to say we need to keep our noses out of other people's business. And if that's what's going to allow us to reduce the strength of the military-industrial complex in this country and convert it into areas like universal education, healthcare, and a living wage, then that is our mission. That is the working class mission of this country. At least it should be, in my opinion. I mean, everybody's going to share their thoughts.
How do I feel about the loyalists in Northern Ireland? I don't know enough. Look, I support people having self-determination. I support people being free to live how they want to live, and other people not dominating them. I don't support imposing dominion over other sentient beings.
I'm going to give a final thought on this. And Josh, again, that's one side of the argument. And then the other side is the fact that Zelensky has eliminated all elections in Ukraine. There is no election now. It is now a fascist state, and that's how it's going to remain. For how long? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I said, I am not by any means an expert on Ukraine. That's why we've had people on to talk about this. Go back, we've had Mehdi on. We've had a few people on to talk about Ukraine. So no, I'm not an expert on it, but I know what I have been witnessing my whole life is a country that will take any and all opportunities to fund as much war and chaos as possible. I am always going to side against war. I'm always going to side against not believing the narrative that we're told that manufactures the consent to go to war.
And ultimately, it comes down to this, you know, like my music, and anybody else who wants to know, do we support a united Ukraine? Here's what I do support. I support the democratic process. And right now, the Ukrainians do not have a democratic process because their government, which is really our government running theirs, does not want that to happen. Because I do believe that there is something to be said.
I like Scott Ritter.
For whether or not we are really going to have this sort of dividing line. As I suggested, if the will of the people of Ukraine feel that the only solution to this problem is to split it between West and East Ukraine, then that is their will. If the will is to unite the nation, then that is what should happen. But right now, it does not appear that that's the way it's going to be.
And we're certainly not pushing that.
Not at all.
We're not pushing anything of any sort of reason.
And so our job, if we are to be what we're supposed to be in the nation, which is, you want to say the world police, we shouldn't be. But let's just assume that that is our role. As the world police,
we suck at it.
We are supposed to be brokering peace between these two nations to avoid as much bloodshed as possible. Not only have we not done that, we have shit on this so badly that this is turning into as bad of a foreign policy disaster in some respects as the war in Iraq. Only in this case, this absolute massacring of people has happened at a much more accelerated rate. To me, that's completely intolerable.
Yeah, I always am against the next war. What I know to be true, this is a very Occam's razor thing to me, like the most likely explanation is usually correct. We are a war machine. That's what we make. That's what we produce. That is what we like. That is who we are. So I am always going to assume that our agenda is that. Then if something comes up that shows I'm wrong on it, but that is always going to be my likely sort of, you know, what I would say my automatic response is that we are seeking war for profit.
And once again, Hamas crimes doesn't justify Israel's crimes. You are once again proving our point. Because
no crime. I think all of these people are war criminals.
We're proving the same thing.
Yeah.
That's the point. So accept the fact that we live in a country where we do not have full control over what goes on. But I like to think that a significant portion of this nation is finally starting to wake up to this reality. And that is a great sign. For those of you who do appreciate our content and recognize that what we're trying to do here is transform politics into service, which seems to be a foreign concept for many. And if you want to help us financially in any capacity, it really does help because, Jen, where are you going on Saturday?
I'm going to DC, but I'm not going on for this show. I mean, that's my personal thing. I'm going personally. That's not where Jen changed money. I will. That's me personally. I will be in DC for the March on Washington on Saturday. And yeah, I just feel like this is an important thing. I also will be in Atlanta, November 10th to the 13th for Stop Cop City, helping wherever I can there.
Yes.
And that I actually have more safety concerns than I think about. I'm not at all thinking about that regarding Saturday. It'll be totally chill. But the Atlanta thing, I think, could get ugly.
Yeah, that could be a rough moment. So we'll see what happens.
So I have a lot of protesting, a lot of marching coming up. It's just a better use of my just complete and utter anger right now. So it's just sort of where I need to be. But yeah, and what do we have coming up though?
Nothing scheduled as of yet, but we'll work on that because there are people that we would like to have on, and we've been working on that for a while.
We'll always come up with something.
Yes, and
I'm hoping to meet up with Katie on Saturday.
Israel is occupying and invading Palestine. Agreed. Russia is occupying and invading Ukraine. Again, agreed.
But they're different. But you can't look at the
circumstances around what is happening is different.
It is. It's different. You know, it's like when you take things out of historic context and then there's no nuance. Yes, those two things are happening, and those two things, but they're different in a sense that Ukraine is not a giant concentration camp, and Russia is not controlling what goes in and out of Ukraine like it has a fence around it.
Josh, again, Palestinians haven't had a chance to vote in 15 years, and you all never called Hamas racist, but Ukraine during a war didn't allow a vote one time. First of all, don't even try it. Don't even try this whole didn't allow a vote. And this whole thing about
you're right
about Hamas is not. No, we of course we've called out Hamas. We have called out all of the atrocities, but never forget that Hamas exists because of Israel. That is why they exist. If you have not been to the West Bank and do not understand what is going on in Gaza and how they do not have any other choice, they are basically stuck in an open-air prison, which they cannot leave.
Concentration.
And Netanyahu has been funding Hamas for a very long time. And look, do I know for a fact that they have been funding it on behalf of the intentions of the United States military-industrial complex? I don't know that for sure, but you know what? The signs kind of point in that direction. And that's how we have to assess it.
Why do you jump to that? I think it's an invasion is justified. Where have I ever said that? See, this is where people just like to be argumentative. This is why I don't discuss things with people. I've never said anything is justified. Those words never came out of my mouth. The problem is everything isn't all in one thing.
Correct. There's a difference between justification and understanding.
Thank you, Cheryl. Nuance required. People just don't get. I've never said that anything was justified. I've never said that. So I don't get that. Like, here's the thing, and I've argued about this many times. It's not either or. This isn't a either or side thing. I know human beings so automatically are so drawn to this dichotomy.
Teams.
You need teams, you need a good guy, you need a bad guy, there's a villain, there's you really need that. It somehow settles us to know which team we're on the good team, right? Like we have to have that. That's not how this works. Multiple things can be true. Multiple things can be good. Multiple things can be bad. They can be bad at the same time. There's layers of bad.
Josh, I don't know who Dylan Burns or Lona Box are, but you know what? If you think that it would be a fruitful conversation to have them on or to go on with them,
I'll talk to people.
100%.
Sure. I mean, that's the thing. I'm just a person of reason.
Anybody.
Yeah,
we're not in this camp of, I can't go talk to that person because that might make me look bad. Again, That's the beauty of the show that we do. There is no financial motive to the messages that we're putting out there. None. And that is where you can actually have conversations with people that you don't have to agree with across the board.
I'm against all violence. I'm against violence. It's not my, I've said this before, I'm against violence. I don't believe in attacking people. I don't think there's any reason to justify that. But I also know that if I were born in captivity, I honestly don't know what I wouldn't do to get out of that situation. So I think that you can understand somebody's situation and see things from their side. That doesn't necessarily is not the same thing as justifying what they're doing just because you're trying to understand something.
I think so.
Well, again, I don't justify anything Russia did, but I don't justify what we do. I don't justify a lot of things. Why do we still have Guantanamo Bay? We constantly commit war crimes over and over on a daily basis in this country. We support them, we finance them, all this stuff. And so then to look at somebody like Putin and be like, oh my God, the audacity. Yes, he's disgusting. He's a warmongering pig. Yes, he is. So are we. Okay, so I just feel like we just have to stop labeling everybody a villain when we're all villains in this mix. There are no good guys.
No.
That's my point. There's no good guys. There's no this isn't television. This isn't like white hats and black hats.
And sometimes you can't choose your government, and sometimes you can't choose the situation that you're living in. Every life matters. But it's easy to say that one issue to another is justified because it isn't your life or your situation that's being put in jeopardy. Just like it's easy for people, particularly those who have been extremely pro-Israel in this moment, who are willing to say that it is perfectly acceptable not only for them not to put on a uniform and get on the front lines and defend their nation, but also that we should continue this war. And it's okay if innocent civilians are killed. That's always been my argument when it comes to what happened in Ukraine from the very beginning.
I'm happy to talk to socialists. And somebody, if you're talking about Tina, you're talking about like Tina Desiree Berg, that is cool, Tina. She's always welcome to come here. And I have talked to her before, so I don't know, like, should be on the show. I'd love to have her come on the show.
Yes.
She could always come on the show.
The issue here is, how do these things end? And unfortunately, the way they end is when eventually they've had enough of one, they just move on to something else. And that's the way it'll be. The issue here, though, is that this may have been the last straw for a lot of people that were probably trying to avoid having to deal with the realities of what's going on, but there is no denying the genocide that is happening in this moment. It is too real, it is too painful, and it is pretty obvious that while anti-Semitism will never be eliminated, it will be stoked to a degree so hot it will scorch you when you touch it by continuing to allow this genocide to go on. This is why people want to hurt Jews, not because that.
Well, there are people that just hate Jews because they're Jews.
Correct. But that is a super minority. When you add this layer into the equation, and then you add in the layers of the Amy Schumers, Deborah Messick's, and Mayim Balak's of the world, that stokes the fire hotter than scorched earth.
Yeah, you ladies are really a bad look for us.
Very bad.
It's really
very
a bad
bad
look for us.
And believe me, the only reason why people that are like it, let's say Cornell, are the students that are being targeted, or perhaps the students that were at NYU, you know why they're the ones that are getting caught up in the crossfire, even though nothing's really happened, but they'll pretend like it is. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that one of them or a few of them get assaulted, and that they're the ones who are getting hurt. You know why that's happening? Because the people with these mega platforms, like the Schumer, Messig, Bilex of the world, they all live in extremely protective bubbles with security detail. No one's going to get to them. That's the difference. Now, if these people were just regular people on the streets who couldn't keep their mouth shut, yeah, they probably would get their comeuppance for what they're doing. But they say what they say from a very, very safe and secluded position.
Quite the ivory tower. Extreme. Yeah, it's disgusting. It's a really bad look for us as tribes people. And I really hope that more and more people realize and learn and open their eyes and see what we were not taught and how we were so lied to and propagandized. But it's a real problem. We really were. Yeah. And it's very difficult. And there is no doubt that this is, there are a lot of people that won't talk to me now. This is definitely going to be a line in the sand for like people that I've had in my life that will probably no longer want to be in my life. And I'm good. And
as you guys can see, these are the opinions of people that choose to live in an alternate reality. And that's okay. If you want to live in it, that's fine. But this is an alternate reality. Okay, no, it's not a war. That's the other thing. It's not a war. It's not a conflict. It's a massacre. It's a genocide. And that's the equivalent, Madzi, the equivalent, and we spoke about this earlier with Norman Finkelstein, is a war is between two sides. This is more akin to a slave uprising, a slave rebellion, like the Nat Turner Rebellion. And then it would be like the USA saying we're at war with our slaves. You don't be at war with people that you have in a concentration camp. What you have are uprisings. And you then of course have to use that as an excuse to then go ethnically cleanse further. But it's not a war. And on top of everything else, you're talking out of two sides of your mouth, Madzi, because on the one hand, you're saying, I do not get this. If anything, we should pray. Stop with the hope and prayers crap, and protest for peace. Stop the
yes.
Yeah. Who are you talking to? Are you talking to Hamas or are you talking to the Israeli armed forces? Because that's where it's coming from. They're committing a genocide. They're shooting fish in a barrel. Just stop pretending. Do not, if you cannot acknowledge the Gaza occupation, then there is nowhere to start this conversation. And then you know what? No, and I argue with you about that. Gaza is not an occupation. Gaza is a concentration camp. The West Bank is an occupation. Please, it's not the same thing. That's not an occupation. It's a concentration camp. They cannot come and go. Mr. McDonald, from one Irish to another, dude, get off your high horse. I don't know that he's referring to us necessarily. I think they were talking about something in the chat. Maybe. I think he was talking about like Amy Schumer, and I think he was talking about them. My apologies, Mac. I think he was talking about those because that's. Right about. I think he was talking about the people we just named as bad representatives of us. And again, I don't want to be judgmental, but a name like Madzi Kokolai is probably Israeli, and that's okay. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with defending their people.
No, it is, and the cognitive disconnect. It's very hard.
It is
for them because you're talking about wanting to undo everything, especially people that are Israeli that are from there. You do have people like Miko Peled, who's been on the show, people that have been made aware and realized that they were lied to for years and years and years and now know the truth. It's a hard truth, and a lot of people would rather just not know it because it's very painful. It's been very difficult peeling away those layers of propaganda. I am having a very hard time dealing with it. I am so full of rage that I cannot even tell any, like, I am beside myself.
Well, we've definitely covered quite a bit, and we love you guys dearly. That's why we engage with the audience as we should. Any type of support that you can provide, remember, any support is tremendously appreciated, especially because we are a demonetized channel.
Yeah, but we can appeal again in November.
Yeah, well, apparently we're going to be able to appeal within the next 2 weeks. Maybe we'll get it back. My guess is that if we do, especially with what we've been talking about, we'll be demonetized again very, very quickly. So it's not going to last, but please go to patreon.com/generational change for as little as $5 a month. You can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel.
We have gotten a couple of new $5 patrons this week, and I haven't had a chance. We have gotten a couple of new ones, but I haven't had a chance to. I responded to one. Whenever we get new ones, I always respond. I haven't responded to the other, and I haven't been able to add them to the list, but we have gotten a couple.
If you choose to donate $10 a month, I've suggested to Jen, I know you didn't bring any of your portraits out.
Because I don't know what, because again, you cannot give away art like that. It's not one of those like things that you can just give away.
$25 a month will get you the Generational Change Silky Smooth baseball jersey for any contributor of $25.
You could also have a purple t-shirt. We have the purple shirts too.
Mm-hmm. And you can go to Cash App, $GenChange if you don't want to put your credit card on the grid, which is certainly understandable, especially today. I don't know why we've had such an absolutely substantial viewership on.
I was having an identity crisis yesterday. I told you I was
Facebook.
having a situation a couple days ago.
Somebody ripping you off.
Somebody is like going to town with me, like with PayPal and Venmo. Like I'm having I had to get a new card. I'm having he called me. He's like, what's wrong? I'm like, having an identity crisis.
Henry, we didn't have enough time to cover everything today, but I can assure you guys on Monday, yes, we will cover the story of the non-Zionist Jewish rabbis in Jerusalem that were assaulted by the Israeli armed forces.
Sect, we could get into that, and there's also a very large population of them in Brooklyn. There's a particular sect of Hasidic Jews that have always been anti-Zionist because to them it's a violation of the teachings, because according to the teachings, you don't have the land of Zion until the Messiah returns. So the idea that they're forcing the creation of a geopolitical ethno-state prior to the arrival of the Messiah is actually against Judaism, and this is that particular sect. So yes, there is a very Orthodox sect, and then there are very many Jews and rabbis that aren't Orthodox that have now come to realize, like, this is not working.
Definitely not.
So yeah, there are a lot of rabbis that are not on board with this.
You don't like my music, Josh the Junkie? Always great to banter, even if we disagree in certain nuanced components regarding Ukraine. But you know what? That's what discourse is for, so that you can have nuanced discussions. Cheryl, Henry, Travers, you freaking smartass. Some of the comments that you put out there today, I almost laughed on the stream because he was knocking them out of the park.
I know, he was.
Alex, great to have you here. Sable, always a pleasure. Soul Life. Again,
you know what you sound like when you go through a thing? You're like the flight attendant when you're walking up, like, bye-bye now, bye-bye. Like you're saying goodbye to everybody. Like,
I am saying goodbye to everybody because that's why they are here. Because without a lively chat, we wouldn't have more people checking in.
No, it's great. And obviously, whoever is helping and referring people, we truly appreciate it, because that's really the best way you can help is share. Get somebody else to come on the live stream. You know, I mean, that's always helpful.
It really does make.
And I can't get a lot of my people to watch. Like, I don't think my parents watch. Most people won't watch because most people don't want to hear this stuff.
No, but the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Well, you know, some people know that it's not good for their mental health and well-being, and they don't want to partake in it.
Well,
I feel like I don't have that luxury.
Well, like you said, somebody that you thought was your friend, that you got to be chummy with. Well, when push came to shove on an issue that really matters to everyday life, they decided that, no, I want to live in my echo chamber. I don't want to live outside.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I've had people tell me they just don't want to know. And that's fine. That's your choice. I don't have that luxury.
Yep.
I feel like I have to like be living with this now basically all day, every day. because it's the least I can do.
Henry?
These people are suffering through it every day. I mean, I can at least just sit there and cry about it. You know, it's like it's the least I can do.
Henry, chip in at Cash App or become a patron. We would certainly appreciate it. And you'll mention your name quite a bit. Maybe we'll try to call.
Well, okay. Now, and we love Jordan, but he has a lot more people.
He does.
He can't, you're never going to get that same special attention from personal attention from Jordan. He has way too many people.
I would preface it with, though, if we were getting 200 people regularly on a live stream, we probably would have enough money in the bank, if you will, of Patreon and Cash App, where we wouldn't need to worry about whether we were getting super chats. And to be honest, it isn't to us, it's really just about collecting revenue from the views. I'm not one who really ever advocated for super chats because YouTube's getting a significant chunk of money anyway.
What we were missing is getting the advertising revenues.
See, that matters.
Yeah, more so than the super chats. The super chats were nice, but instead of super chats, it's much better for us for people to do Patreon. But no, it was nice to have ad revenue, and which we don't have. And you know what? There were months where it was pretty decent, depending on certain clips. And it's definitely hard right now. It's really hard. Because I'm having to spend because otherwise we won't be able to do anything.
Henry Kujawa, I'm sorry if they are not pronouncing your name correctly. I at least
Kujawa.
Yeah, at least somewhat notable. Ends a shine. What is a super chat? It's money.
It's you throw money at us, sort of like girly dancers, but we don't take off our clothes. But you can only have super chats when you're a monetized channel, and we have been demonetized. I angered certain powers that be, and they be angry. I'm a bad Jew.
Terrible.
I angered certain powers that be and and I was demonetized.
So unfortunately,
and so we no longer can get ad revenue on our show until we can appeal it in November.
It is November.
It's not. Oh, it is November.
Be on the lookout for Jen. I'm going to try to get her to get in front of a camera for specifically status.
I will be in DC on Saturday. I will be wearing purple.
Yes.
Which it's the only thing I can tell that can help potentially make me stand out in what I assume was going to be a massive amount of people.
It should be, and that will hopefully send an even bigger
message. Yes, Alex, she was
stash.
Involved in our demonetization.
So, well, we don't have proof.
No.
We have assuming that it is most likely.
You're right. I don't have proof.
But all signs point in that direction. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things. We love you all. We'll see you Monday.